This is a budget which is with its ears to the ground and not being in denial about those things. I think you should give credit to that.
So you give credit for the fact that they put employment on top, which is great.
Yes.
You give credit for the fact that they put rural infrastructure and agriculture on top, which is great.
On top.
But you should also raise questions, surely, that in a country of 28 states, 29 with Jammu and Kashmir, that only 2 states should figure for such a large part of the finance minister's speech. Is that, I mean, what does it say to the 26 other states of the country? Why not accept that politically he had to reach out to JDU and TDP?
Correct.
If I may just add that some of the points mentioned, the money would be raised through multilateral agencies. So it's not part of the fiscal spend of the government. It will be probably World Bank or Asian Development Bank loans. So to that extent, the political job is also done without hitting the fiscal aspect of it.
The strongest playing card you can have in politics is to be an ally to a government in minority. You know, you can pretty much swing the government and make them dance to your tunes. Bihar and Andhra Pradesh very clearly.
I would not say it's chancing. They said no to the special category. They said no to the special status.
You've got special allocations.
Back door, halfway there, halfway here.
No, but Bihar and Andhra have got, make no mistake, a much better deal than they would have otherwise.
Well, let's wait for the numbers. Let's wait for the numbers.
We will need to look at the numbers.
Yes,
because the kind of package which has been announced, how would the money go for the capital project or for the Polavaram, for others? Is it being allocated? Only at some stage she said grants, but at other places she didn't say either as loan or outside the budget or how. I think we'll need to look at
the details.
So they also mentioned using multilateral agencies. So they did say that, but you know, I thought that the specific allotments were for these 2 states in a manner.
It's not reflected in the fiscal deficit number.
Sure.
You have still 0.2%.
Which is again a strength of this government.
Exactly.
I mean, when you look at 4.9% fiscal deficit, the government will claim that they've got that completely, they've got their fiscal management completely at least on track.
In long term, this is with reference to what she announced is 4.5, but 4.5 itself is a very high fiscal deficit.
4.9.
No, now 4.9, but the goal of 4.5% itself is a very large fiscal deficit. Our Act says 3%.
Yeah, 3.5%. 3%. No, but nobody so far even bothered about the financial.
No. In the first term, it's the same government.
Yes, but now they're making an effort to at least tend in that direction.
That is what I am saying.
To compliment them for being financially conservative and not being reckless.
Given the scale, I mean, one thing that the Modi government has tried to do is put its welfare schemes on scale. I mean, when you talk of 3 crore Awas Yojanas, they've tried in a way to saturate welfare schemes. So naturally, there will be some pressure. They've had headroom because of the RBI dividend. The question that I have is, at the end of the day, do you see this as a budget with political messaging or a budget that has set us on the roadmap for the next 5 years or 25 years, as the Prime Minister said? I saw nothing, Rahul, with due regard to suggest what our roadmap for the next 5 or 25 years is.
Let's take the 2 big ideas. I want Subhash Garg to come in on the employment-linked incentives. The Congress is saying, "Ye to hamara idea tha." The BJP is saying, "We've brought it, so you know, obviously it's our idea." But the big question is, by giving these incentives to employees and employers, will it actually foster job creation in your view?
So the emphasis on employment and job creation is fabulous.
Yes.
It has to be there, it must be there. But when you go into the contents of it, I think we will need to go more. My sense, the way I read, is that a lot of it is still in the form of giving some PF kind of contributions, which are there for last 7 years. We have ABRY, before that we have another scheme which was doing for last 7 years. So is there a new way?
No, but do they work? So does a financial incentive for job creation work in this fashion?
May not actually work. It adds to the new EPFO numbers, etc., which we see quite often. How would the new internship scheme would act?
No, so I'll come to internships in just a moment.
A friend of mine just sent me a message saying that I think one of the schemes that they've got for employment link is based on the fact that your first job gets you 1 lakh and more. Now, many of them are arguing, where am I going to...
Up to 1 lakh.
Up to 1 lakh and more.
1 lakh and more. Up to 1 lakh. It is up to jobs that pay 1 lakh.
Up to 1 lakh.
Yes.
Now, the question is that how many jobs eventually will actually benefit from this? How many employers will actually take advantage of this ELI scheme?
That is very important. Does something substitute or it's actually a new
No,
job.
but even if it substitutes, at least those jobs are now in the formal market.
One goes
They have
out,
protections.
another comes in.
No, but the biggest question, Harsh, is
Yes.
will this limited incentive encourage any employer to add to the number of people he employs because of this incentive
To
that's
add
been
to
given?
Mr. Garg's point, it is possible that instead of informal jobs on the margin, that job might be now become a classified formal sector
To
job.
claim the incentive.
Yeah, but then that helps the employee to get some kind of protections in terms of hiring and firing, some pensions, some at least 2-3 months of cooling off period if they have to,
Then the
resign from
employer
job.
will compare
Yes,
the advantages
exactly.
of getting
So the
this
trade-off-
incentive versus the disadvantage of having this guy formally
in
on
an
his
informal
roles.
sector. Exactly. So it moves the
Rajiv,
needle
why do you
towards
think it will
formalization.
work? Because that's one of the big ideas, the employment-linked incentive. It sounds phenomenal in theory. Does it, in your view, could it work in practice?
No, I think it will work in
Why?
practice. Because the employer for the first time will have the incentive not to hire contract labor, but to hire formal labor on its rolls. I think that's a very big idea. And therefore,
Exactly.
and also the internship, thing, the 3,000 rupees that the government is paying on the internship, I think is again a very good idea because, it will encourage employers.
What kind of internship? So somebody comes and
Rajiv-
interns with any company, they'll get this
The
internship
top-
allowance?
They said 500 companies, and it'll, that
CPSEs.
people come- yeah, sorry?
500 CPSEs.
So only for public sector
And
enterprises?
amongst them, at least
Amongst
500
them
CPSEs.
also the others.
No, how will this work? Just try and explain from what you've understood. How will this
you asked
internship
him,
scheme?
Rajiv, so it's only the first pay you government is giving. So employer has to think about
The first
No, it's still
timer.
4 years.
I thought it's first year.
The first year.
It's the first year.
timer.
First timer, first year.
First timer, they will
first
pay
month
the,
of the first year.
No, first year.
First year, first timer, first
It's a
year.
very big
एक time के लिए करोगे तो nobody will do it. Then
So,
what's the
so
point?
in a sense, I think that's the biggest, I think that's what
It's a
the
big
government
deal.
will claim is the biggest takeaway, that they've recognized that there is a jobs challenge.
That's right.
They've recognized that they need to
Correct.
do something for those who have, for both companies as well as the youth who have been banging at the doors, especially young, at election time as well, that Rozgar is a major concern.
No, so they've
Whether this is a
accepted that.
game changer, I think is a
Yes,
huge
we'll
question
have to
mark.
do.
How employers, I know Mr. Rajiv Kumar is saying employers will be tempted to formalize labor. I'm not so sure that, I think we are going to have to see whether that actually works
No, so I
on the
think
ground or
what's
not.
very clear is that the government is acknowledging that job creation is an
Absolutely.
essential challenge, and they've thrown something
Correct.
at it.
Absolutely.
They've thrown some ammunition at it.
Absolutely.
The efficacy with which this works is something that really needs to be determined. But it's a big idea that's been thrown up. Harsh, the Congress will say, and many Congress leaders were messaging at this time, boss, this was our idea. You're copying from our
There is
manifesto.
no harm in getting good ideas from the Congress or from Germany. The point is who gets to implement it and implement
You're
it
saying
well.
the Congress got the idea from
Yeah, so there is
Germany.
no harm in even if it's a Congress idea. Except talking point, I don't see any downside to it.
And just as a humorous
Congress
aside,
come up with more
just
ideas.
as a humorous aside, and to show how politics works, actually, when you looked at an earlier Congress manifesto, many of the farm laws that the Narendra Modi
Yes,
government brought were
absolutely.
in that Congress manifesto, and the Congress then went and opposed those ideas because they were in the opposition. So where you stand in Indian politics depends on where you sit. I think it's good if the government takes something which the opposition has put out, which has caught the imagination. The Congress called it a right to apprenticeship. The
They're
government
calling
is
it an
calling an
incentive for internship.
But it's essentially the same broad idea that's coming
No,
forward.
but can you
ma'am.
explain,
So I
Subhash
just
Gar, what
wanted-
you've understood
Yes.
of how this internship
Sorry?
scheme will work?
So
Yes.
internships, now think about it from the employer's perspective. I hope it doesn't become another Narega. Ki you get money, but you don't really get trained.
Is
Because who has
internship
it
only
back?
for
You see,
government
that's
companies or
my
is it
worry.
for private companies as well?
Yeah.
Is
So
internship
it's
only
for
for
private company.
For private as well
Nobody
as
has
CPS.
time for insurance.
For,
And
like, if, for
train
example,
them.
somebody interns with the India Today group, the government will give an internship allowance for
That's
that.
correct.
For all companies.
You can be rest assured the way government schemes work, there will be some criteria and it won't be easy to just get 3,000 rupees.
Correct.
Mr. Gar can explain that better. So I'm not.
He's the one who puts the devil in the details.
It won't
So
be
how
like
is this
3,000
likely
rupees
to
for
work?
everybody.
No, we will have to see. Internship is a different concept than apprenticeship.
The two different things.
Apprenticeship, you are learning some skill. Internship, you are studying somewhere and then you are doing some kind of work with someone, which is
Isn't
not correct.
apprenticeship more logical than internship?
No, both are logical.
Both are required.
Internship is a very well recognized mode of doing some getting work experience.
Actually, the distinction between the two is very blurred. Because internship and apprenticeship are pretty much the same thing because you are doing.
No, you're not
Let's get in
graduating.
Sunil Munjal to find out how employers are looking at
Employment-linked
incentives. Sunil Munjal, good to have you on the show. Your first reaction to the budget, specifically, if we may start, because we've been debating it, this big idea of an employment-linked incentive scheme. will it be bought by employers, or will employers want to study the detail before going ahead?
No, for anything, you obviously want to study the details about what all of the implications are before anything gets implemented, and that's a natural ask. But overall, I thought the budget was more like a statement of intent of 5 years rather than just a one-year budget. She covered such a wide spectrum. There was a smattering of things right across, right from girls, women, agriculture, startups. There was almost no area left untouched. A lot of it, however, said that we will do a study over the next 6 months. We will come back with more details. A lot of it also was encouraging multilateral agencies to get involved, whether with states or with small industry, etc. They did, however, back that up by saying that the government will provide the guarantees for those. I thought that was a good smart
Punjal, let's
thing
look
to
at
do.
some specific. That's a broad stroke reaction. The big idea Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has laid is that there will be employment-linked incentives, not just for you as an employer, but take, for example, other companies, also some MSMEs. From the mindset of an employer, do you think that some of the semi-formal, informal jobs which were off the payrolls then get regularized because for 4 years the government offers an incentive to those who are then brought on the payroll? To what extent do you think this will boost formal job creation?
I think in isolation, these things work, but not super effectively. But I think clubbed with the multiple other things that she mentioned, I think it can work. So please remember at this moment, one of the things that we are constantly talking about is the feeling of joblessness. It's not as if there is actual joblessness, by the way. The feeling that we are not creating enough jobs is a serious problem. And inflation, of course, does not help at all at the same time. So by doing 2 or 3 things, one is controlling the fiscal deficit to where she has and announcing a lower one next year, it's a clear indication of what the government finances are likely to look like. Therefore, the impact on the overall economy. Now, having said that, if you are encouraging companies to grow by the 4 or 5 things that she mentioned, then club alongside that to take in interns is actually a good idea. To take in new employees under making them formal, I think is a good idea. Will it work across the board? It's hard to say today because, as you just said, we have yet to see the fine print. But overall, this is something that as industry we have been asking for. We said on the one hand, you have production-linked incentive. You also need to encourage employment, especially in sectors that have high employment potential. Whether you look at textiles or you look at sectors which had suffered in the economy overall, also needed some attention.
Mr. Munjal,
But is an internship effectively a short-term employment, essentially? So you're not suggesting beyond that 1 year that you're guaranteeing them some kind of employment. You're just giving them a leg up at the start.
It's on the spectrum between skilling and full-time
So it's more the messaging that you're giving, that you're conscious of the fact that there is a job problem and you're trying to reach out and convince both employers as well as the young people. You're trying to do something.
On-the-job skilling also happens.
The job skilling is a separate scheme that they've announced that they're going to do.
The other one, where you pay 1 year salary, is a job creation scheme.
Okay. One of the country's senior financial sector executives, Sanjay Nair, joins us, founder, chairman, Sovereign Investment Fund, has run different kinds of banks. Sanjay, welcome. I want to start by asking you about the increase in the long-term capital gains tax. The market's obviously initially reacting quite negatively to that. Do you think there was logic to why this has been increased from 10 to 12.5? Or as Rajiv Kumar said earlier, it's like trying to fix something that aren't broken?
That's true. You can look at it that way. But
Exuberance is not broken.
Long-term capital gains. We should make sure it's not the driver of the markets. I mean, we are not. It's not like we're an expensive LTCG among the other global countries. So I don't think it's a big deal to increase by 2.5 points. If the underlying growth is there and the way the PE multiples are, I don't think it should have a long-term impact on the markets.
Also, angel tax finally being abolished was a bad idea to begin with. The government acknowledging that, quite belatedly. What kind of an impact? Because you're investing a lot in private equity, you're investing a lot in startups. So your sense of the impact that abolition will have?
Sorry, I missed that question again.
I'm saying angel tax being done away with, your assessment of the impact this will have on the startup sector.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a positive one. That's really positive. These are small irritants that had actually escaped not attention, but attention to really get done. Like, this ESOPs for foreign expats working in the country, this movable assets being depenalized for less than 20 lakhs, angel tax. I mean, these just had to go. And I think I'm very happy that those have been addressed, howsoever small, but they're irritants, and it just creates a climate that it's tough for startups to get things done and to have the right shareholder agreements, to have the right kind of fundraising at the right fair market value. So I think that's a real welcome change.
So Munjal, a lot was said that we should signal that we are moving away from protectionism, that tariffs should be brought down. It's been done in some sectors. Mobiles, it's been done for minerals, it's been done for gold, silver. Do you think adequate signaling has been done about wanting to embrace international trade, or do you think more should have been done?
I think there's a second part of the signal. One is that we are moving towards open trade. Second is we have been selected with saying these are things that matter to us, which incidentally is the approach every country in the world today is taking. The old move towards globalization and everyone depending on each other clearly has taken a hard knock over the last 5 years. Every country is pulling back. So we are saying a signal, we want to continue, but we want to continue selectively. And from signal, could we have done more? Probably, yes.
I think this move to abolish angel tax is the best one.
What impact will it have on the startup sector?
The government has learned very hard way. You remember last year budget, they actually increased or brought the foreign investors into the ambit of the angel tax.
Sir, ये बुरे idea लेके आते हैं bureaucrats.
Correct. No, they brought last year. So I don't know
They keep tinkering and tweaking.
I don't know who brought this time, but that's the most sensible.
No, but it's going away. So
Yes.
but I'm saying, look at because the big message is there is continuity in policy making, right? If last year you're increasing a tax, suddenly you're abolishing it, then where is the continuity, Harsh Gupta, you're
what
talking
I'm saying.
about?
They learned it very hard
Sometimes
way.
when you make a mistake, it doesn't, no point being continuously making
On this, you're making
It's
mistake.
good to actually remove
last
the tax.
8 years.
I just want to bring the
big
discussion back to the bond market, not just the equity market. The bond market obviously likes the fact that instead of 5.1% on the interim budget fiscal deficit, we have a 4.9%.
Correct.
Remember, this is despite coalition political pressures. This is despite the fact that obviously Andhra and Bihar wanted
And
something.
this is when
lower.
India is joining a lot of the international bond indices.
Exactly.
Whether it's the Bloomberg.
In fact, the RBI has now been sterilizing foreign inflows.
Yeah, but
last week it actually...
This is also due to RBI doubling its contribution.
Yes, but that is as per a framework. It is
Doubling from the target.
It is not a discretionary contribution. It is as per an economic capital framework that RBI and the government of India
I
have
know,
agreed.
but the point is that
Yes.
the RBI made all that money because of foreign exchange valuations, etc.,
Yes.
etc. All of that, but the fact remains that they
government-
doubled the contribution from the target.
In the
And so
renewed,
therefore, it's
I'm saying in the renewed political context, the government could have stuck with 5.1%, like it stuck with its capital
That's
expenditure
great.
plan.
That's great going.
The fact that 20 basis points were shaved off
Yes.
is a strong message to the bond market that there will be less supply of paper. As Rahul was saying, you're now in the bond indices. So that will increasingly bring down the cost of capital.
I hope
And some shift from
I think it's
equity
a
markets
good
to bond
signaling.
markets.
I don't think it's a big
change
move,
in tax regime.
but it's a good signaling.
it's a great signaling, and I think kudos.
Psychologically less than 5 also, right?
No, and signal also to investors to consider, pairing their stock market assets and
bond,
investing
exactly.
more
in bonds.
on the debt side.
Exactly.
What is, when you say signaling, what for you, if there was is there a steady narrative that this government has built? Is there something that comes out of this budget that suggests, when I heard Sunil Munjal saying we've got a direction for the next 5 years, she did outline 8 priorities of the government, but they were, apple pie priorities, infrastructure,
Motherhood
women, is that a roadmap that you see? Was there, apart from employment, is there a focus area that you see that has been built for the next 5 years, as the Prime Minister promised that this
So
budget?
before I come to that,
Yes.
on the bond side, the fact is that foreigners' investment in our bonds is still less than what it was in 1920, despite the bond index being. So why they were not investing? Why they were not buying Indian bonds? I think that signaling effect that you have very high fiscal deficit, you have very low credit rating, was playing.
Yeah, but the big message. What is the big message?
I think the big message is continuity. The fact that Modi 3.0 is more like Modi 2.0 when it comes to Modinomics. So more stability, more capex, and now time for the privatization.
Yes, Puneet.
Okay, so as everybody used to say, "Pehle roti, kapda, or makan." This time the budget to me signals naukri, sadak, or makan. Because a lot of emphasis on roads, infrastructure, a lot of emphasis on jobs, and then of course land records, housing, all
so
of
let's
that.
ask Sanjay Nair this question. The effort that's been made to try and spur job creation, what impact, Mr. Nair, do you think this is likely to have? The signaling is good, the government using some of its financial gunpowder to try and encourage job creation. In the end, from what we know in the public domain, do you think it's likely to work?
Yeah, I think so. I think, look, I was just listening to all of you. I think the big message here is that you've got a pretty balanced budget in a way, and you've reduced the fiscal deficit, as someone mentioned, and I don't know who that was, that we didn't have to shave off the 20 basis points, but I think it will give a lot of confidence to both foreign and local bond investors and really adds to this stability. What I think the big message is there is no easy consumption stop. I thought they might do that a little bit, but even that is not there. They've taken the long, arduous way, which is simplifying things, youth skilling, credit guarantee schemes more for the MSMEs, more of this, employer and employee benefits for more employment. If they've taken the longer route of job creation, MSMEs for local manufacturing, and also making sure that they've tinkered with custom duties to make sure that you have a lot more local manufacturing. So really it's going towards, I think someone just gave a very good thing. It's about creating naukri, and then that should lead to much more disposable income and consumption. So frankly, this is a long, arduous route taken. If it works, which all depends on execution between the center and states, I think you have far more sustainable consumption looking ahead, and then hopefully capex picks up. So I think that, according to me, is the big message here. And look, fiscal consolidation is welcome, frankly. Yeah.
But and Rajiv Kumar, since you were with Niti Aayog, you can tell us among the successes of the Modi government in the early years, one of the failures was seen as skill development. You had a Ministry of Skill Development. A lot of talk was on skilling, but very little happened actually, many believe, on the ground when it came to skill development. Even the minister was eventually changed. Is that now you can't just do employment-linked scheme without really focusing on skilling? Is that going to have to become a big challenge for this government? The fact is that it's all very well to talk about skilling, but you're going to have to make sure that it actually translates into real skilling on the ground.
But Rajdeep, I think it's to the credit of the government that they haven't given up on skilling effort. Because some people could have said, well, that was a bad idea, let's give it up. In this budget, the finance minister has announced further allocations and a loan for those who are doing it into skilling. There are several schemes, I think 3 or 4 schemes that they've been outlined. Yes. So I think this continued focus on skilling is a recognition that today our youth is not employable. And they have to be made employable as fast as possible.
That's a long-term challenge, though. It's not a short-term challenge, and there are no short-term fixes.
But has to start now, and that's what the government
has done. One subtle shift is that instead of skilling people outside of jobs and then giving them jobs, there is a focus on trying to skill them on the job through apprenticeships, internships, and I think that is the best kind of long-term skilling, because it does not get theoretical and academic then.
But there's also a philosophical message here, which is in keeping with the way the Prime Minister views his economics. He doesn't like easy handouts. So the idea that you, for example, the idea was that you increase the Kisan Nidhi from 6,000 to 8,000, or you do some kind of an urban Manrega. He's eschewed such ideas. So there's no easy handout, which is typically what the opposition may have thought they would have wanted to do, or they may have wanted to do, or the kind that we're seeing in Karnataka, etc. There's no easy handout.
It's workfare, not welfare. Structural. Workfare, not welfare.
They're trying to make structural changes. For example, if there is more, and that I think is something which really needs to be applauded. We can criticize the increase in long-term capital gains for the equity markets. That's just really, one aspect.
The markets have recovered largely.
The larger aspect, though, is that they're trying to fix the structure, the nuts and bolts of the economy.
Yeah. The only thing I worry about, as I said earlier, is I hope this internship program is well executed, because otherwise it risks becoming like an NREGA. Because there'll be people just sitting in the companies with nobody to train them and collecting money. and doing no
No, but
work.
you know, Sunita, the thing here is that companies don't like people sitting idly inside their premises.
No, but they may
Unlike
not come to
Manrega.
the premises, they may stay at home. How do you,
Well, I mean,
how do you ensure that it's
that
properly
is always
implemented?
the situation, even in skill development.
No,
There
it
are
happened in the
there are
US.
fake
Remember,
certificates and all of
when
that going down.
employment incentives were given on the back of the pandemic, there were a lot of reportage in the United States media where individuals were claiming this in cahoots with the companies without actually any work happening. And if it happened to that extent in the US, in India, jugaad can go to another
and
level.
then work from home. How do you? I mean, and who's going to train these people if the
that-
manager is working from home?
Rahul,
that
when we
implementation
traveled in India during the elections, when you spoke to people about the Rozgar challenge, the point that Rajiv Kumar made, and I think is reflected in the budget, is not just about employment, it's employability. And I think that is a challenge which is a long-term challenge. It's not going to be fixed by one budget or what the... the intent is well. My worry with all of this, the intent is in the right direction. The reality on the ground is very different. And unless I see...
but so far, Rajdeep, there's no
I haven't
answer to the
seen
question.
Much higher allotments for education. You know, you want to see not just in skilling, but you want education to be prioritized far more than has happened in the last 10 years, or dare I say, some will say over the last 75 years. Unless you're going to dramatically change that, Rahul, it's not just physical infrastructure. You're going to have to focus far more on social infrastructure.
On education, for example, look what happened in Uttar Pradesh, right? Government school teacher unions are refusing to digitally enter and exit the school based on records. So there's no point just throwing more money as outlays without getting the outcomes.
Yeah,
so it's not just announcing in the budget without getting
But
those...
as I said, it didn't happen with the first tenure of Mr. Modi when skill development was seen as a major focus. It didn't take
Which is
off.
why I think on-the-job
If you
training
look at the
actually
skill-
is a very sensible and pragmatic way to do it, as opposed to showing a headline allocation to education,
In
which
fact,
goes through teacher
I would have
unions.
been
They are not
happier.
coming to schools.
I would have been happier because there are actually acts governing the apprenticeship. Is that if there are much greater allocation to apprenticeship under that name, because that would be a much better way to, sort of balance the
But I
demand
think
and
it's
supply.
been called internship because if it was called apprenticeship, there would have been too much credit
Given to the
fight
Congress
between the
party.
Congress and the BJP.
That doesn't matter, yeah. But the
आपको नहीं matter करता जो election लड़के आए उसको matter करता है.
From Aadhaar downwards, this government has been pragmatic.
Aadhaar existed. You can't now bring an apprenticeship
pragmatic
act.
enough to take other people's ideas.
Yeah, you can change the name
we should
and
study
keep
the
scheme,
we should
but-
study the German
Rajdeep,
model.
But I want to know, one of the concerns before in the lead up was MSMEs.
Yeah.
And, government's figures themselves suggest that you've had, 35,000 MSMEs closed down between 2020 and 2023. That's just the official number.
35 lakh.
Sorry?
35,000 you said?
Yeah, as per what the minister had said last year in Parliament, he had given the number of 35,000, which clearly was a government number. I'm saying the actual numbers are far higher. I'm just trying to understand, do you think enough was done in this budget for MSMEs?
So I think Mudra loans went up from like 10 lakhs to 20 lakhs. I feel the fact remains that employment matters. It's not necessarily whether MSCs hire them or large companies hire them. And Manish Agarwal often rightly says, right, at the end of the day, everybody wants a job offer letter, wants some people who cannot be fired at will, at least 2 months notice, etc., etc. So MSMEs are important, but let us also not romanticize MSCs because they are not going to create the kind of formal employment that large corporates can.
Rajdeep,
Yes.
Additional financial allocations and announcements of credit, guarantee and technology is not going to, get the MSMEs as required. What is required for MSMEs is to remove the compliance and regulatory burden on the ground, the regulatory cholesterol. The thing that they face every day are the calls from the inspectors and all of that. And I think that hasn't yet. Now, what she announced was Jan Vishwas 2.0. I think the sooner they get that out, to get the trust of the small businessmen and small entrepreneurs back to them. At the moment, they see the whole climate as being business non-friendly. That has to change. And that hurts, I think, MSMEs will continue to play a very important role.
So if you're wondering what to eat for lunch and you're looking for signals in the budget papers, go for shrimps. Order in some shrimps. I think a lot of focus in the budget. Clearly, the flavor of the palate, Rajdeep, I'm sure, is already placing some order, is on shrimps. I want to show some
That's
political,
again the Andhra connection.
political
Aquaculture.
Andhra and Gujarat, but Gujarat was always there. Andhra, they've got now, so they want to encourage everyone to go out and eat some shrimps. I want to show you some political reactions to the union budget. We'll start with Akhilesh Yadav. Let's see how, because the likes of the Trinamool are calling this a Bihar Andhra Pradesh budget. So let's take a look at how the politics is playing out over this budget.
उत्तर प्रदेश जैसा प्रदेश जो प्रधानमंत्री देता है, क्या वहाँ के किसान के लिए कुछ बड़े फैसले हैं? किसान की फसल की पैदावार, उसकी कीमत के लिए क्या कोई इंतजाम है? कहने को तो याद होगा आप सबको कि पिछली बार कहा था कि मंडी और एग्रीकल्चर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के लिए स्ट्रेंथन करने के लिए लाखों करोड़ रुपए हैं। अगर वो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर स्ट्रेंथन हुआ था तो इसका मतलब किसान की आय दोगुनी होनी चाहिए या किसान की आय बढ़नी चाहिए थी, वो तो नहीं बढ़ी। तो किसान के साथ संकट पैदा किया इन्होंने, बेरोजगारी इन्होंने बढ़ाई है। 10 साल में जो इतनी बेरोजगारी बढ़ गई उसको कैसे कम करें, और वो भी आधी अधूरी नौकरी से।
ये यूनियन बजट जो 2024-25 का पेश किया गया था, ये एक तरीके से सबके लिए ड्रीम बजट है, सब सेक्शन के लिए और खास करके युवाओं के लिए और महिलाओं के लिए। इससे जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, रिकॉर्ड नंबर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का जो एलोकेशन हुआ है, कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर का 11 लाख करोड़ से भी ज़्यादा कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर, ये ऐतिहासिक है।
ये बिहार को दे दें, झारखंड को दे दें, यूपी को दे दें। अब जनता जो आज देख रही है, इनको हटाना चाहती है। अब ये निश्चित तौर से आम जनता के हित के लिए एक भी, क्या बनारस के लिए कोई कल कारखाना आया है, कोई फैक्ट्री का अनाउंसमेंट हुआ है, यूपी के लिए कुछ हुआ है? मुझे नहीं लगता है कुछ भी किए। जब प्रधानमंत्री अपने संसदीय क्षेत्र में कुछ नहीं दे पा रहे हैं, मैं समझता हूं कि ये पूरा बजट निरर्थक है और जनता को केवल भ्रमित करने के लिए।
Sure. Yes, Rajiv Kumar, you wanted to intervene.
Yeah, I wanted to intervene to say that for me, one of the big ideas for the next 5-10 years is the recognition that it is the urban centers which will drive growth. And so therefore, the whole focus on reducing the stamp duties here, to get the sort of the new Awas Yojana here, the transit development, transit oriented development, the street market development for the vendors, etc. The whole, the big thing about 14 cities above 30 lakhs getting some frame. I think that's a very good thought, because that is what is going to happen in the next 10-15 years. And because there are 400 million people waiting to be urbanized, and all of these measures are going to help that, influence that. And then the PM Awas Yojana for 1 crore new houses for the urban poor. For industrial dormitory type housing for the workers. We tried in China all the time, but now for the first time going to be here. I think these are very good thoughts, very good ideas, and that will help, spur growth, because the urban centers, because urban cities are going to be the drivers of growth going forward.
Okay, for a moment, since you saw the political reactions, the reactions are not surprising. The states which feel left out are usually the opposition ruled states in this instance. But that happens with most governments, particularly when you are now in a coalition arrangement and you are dependent on two allies. How do you see that in terms of this kind of federal concept that essentially is at the heart of India? Do these states which feel left out really have a case when they see all these allotments to Andhra Pradesh and Bihar?
So, in Indian polity, the state-specific schemes by the central government are a rarity. But the compulsion of coalition government is what is driving. You coined this word, Purvodaya Vikas Yojana or something, but essentially it is meant for Bihar and Andhra Pradesh. So it is understandable, but certainly Odisha, which is there right in this zone, will feel quite a lot sorry about it. Let's see what is there for Odisha and how does it react. Bengal, you can politically explain, perhaps for the reasons which are known, you may not get it. But your remark about the wider, I think there is going to be resentment. from the remaining states that why should we be discriminated against? And this is a very fundamental change from the way we have been doing for last 75 years.
So that's the nature of coalition politics. It's not as if it started now. You know, this is Narendra Modi 3.0 is a coalition government.
But earlier coalition governments also did not do it. Go back to Narasimha Rao, go back to Atal Bihari Vajpayee government. They were not as partisan in the.
No, but look at the optionality. The choice was, do you push for a special status for Andhra Pradesh and Bihar, which was the original demand, which would have involved far higher financial
a special state was a no-go anywhere.
It was never going to happen, Rahul. At least certainly Andhra Pradesh, Chandrababu Naidu.
If you've got allies, you have to take care of it.
The only thing happens is the package.
So we want to go across to a group of farmers who are standing by with my colleague Chitra Tripathi and understand. We've heard from the markets, we're hearing from India Inc., we're hearing from economists. Let's hear from the Desh Ka Kisan. Chitra, what are you picking up by speaking to these farmers? How are they reacting to this union budget for 25? क्या कह रहे हैं जिन किसानों से आप बात कर रही हैं, चित्रा?
देखिए राहुल, इस वक्त मेरी मौजूदगी है नोएडा के खरौली गांव में और यहाँ पर बहुत सारे किसान हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं। 1.5 लाख करोड़ का भारी भरकम बजट यहाँ पर सरकार की ओर से दिया गया है ताकि खेती किसानी को बढ़ावा दिया सके, ग्रामीण अर्थव्यवस्था को मजबूती दी जा सके, चाहे दलहन हो तिलहन हो, उसके लिए अलग से व्यवस्था की गई है। प्राकृतिक खेती को बढ़ावा देने के लिए यहाँ पर सरकार की ओर से बड़े बड़े ऐलान किए गए हैं। राकेश टिकैत जी इस वक्त हमारे साथ जुड़ चुके हैं इंडिया टुडे पर, सीधे इनसे बातचीत करते हैं। राकेश जी, बहुत स्वागत है आपका।
धन्यवाद।
अब ये जो बजट आ गया है निर्मला सीतारमण का, मोदी 3.0 का, क्या बातें आपको अच्छी लगी, क्या बातें मीठी, क्या खट्टी लगी, क्या लेकर जाना चाहेंगे और क्या उम्मीदें ऐसी रह गई जो लग रहा था कि पूरी हो सकती थी और नहीं हुई? राकेश जी,
देखो, खरीद की गारंटी जब तक नहीं देंगे, अगर इनको बजट बढ़ाना तो पूरी खरीद कर लो, खरीद ये करेंगे नहीं तो एमएसपी गारंटी कानून की बात कर सकते थे, वो इनसे हुई नहीं। और बिहार जैसे स्टेट जहां पे बहुत पैकेज दिया गया है, एक ये भी दे देते हैं कि भाई जो पैसा हमने दिया है बिहार को, उससे जो वहां की मंडी सिस्टम होंगे, बाजार समिति, वो बहाल करेंगे। ये सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट को करना चाहिए।
अब बिहार के किसान नेता तो आकर बोलते नहीं हैं, आप यूपी के किसान नेता बिहार के मुद्दे को लेकर आगे चलेंगे।
सबसे ज्यादा लेबर तैयार हो रही है, तो क्यों हो रही है? क्योंकि एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर पूरा बिहार का खत्म कर दिया, मंडी सेक्टर है ही नहीं वहाँ पे बिहार
इतना। बिहार पे क्यों फोकस कर रहे हैं आप? अब आज का बजट कैसा लगा? पहले बताए ना, इंडिया टुडे के दर्शक जानना चाहते हैं कि राकेश टिकैत जी को आज का बजट कैसा लगा?
देखो, दिल्ली के कागजू में तो बजट सरकार की नजरों में तो ठीक है, लेकिन किसान के वहां पे इसका कोई बेनिफिट नहीं होगा। सोलर पे चीज हम छोड़ दे कि वो उस पे कितनी सब्सिडी देंगे, उसको छोड़कर दूसरा और
किया गया है,
उसका किया गया है, वो कितनी देंगे उस पे वो देख लेते हैं। लेकिन दूसरा और ढुलमुल पूरा बजट रहेगा।
ढुलमुल था बजट,
ढुलमुल रहेगा।
कौन सी सबसे बड़ी उम्मीद थी जो सरकार की ओर से पूरा?
देखो, सरकार की उम्मीद ये है, सरकार से उम्मीद ये करते हैं कि भाव मिल जाए हमको। ये भाव पे बात नहीं करते, भाव मत मांगो इनसे। बजट में दिया कि हम दालों को बढ़ावा देंगे, कौन सा फार्मूला है भाई? सरकार दालों का प्रोडक्शन बढ़वा देगी? दालों का प्रोडक्शन, तेल का प्रोडक्शन तो किसान बढ़ाएगा, अगर उसको पैसे मिलेंगे, उसकी खरीद होगी तो बढ़ा देगा।
तो किसान को वो सहूलियत भी देना तो सरकार की जिम्मेदारी है ना, ताकि उसकी फसलों में और ज्यादा जिंदगी आए, उसकी फसलें लहराती रहे, जैसा कि इस वक्त पीछे मक्का की फसल लहरा रही है।
10 दिन तक मध्य प्रदेश में किसान चना लेके, दालें लेके खड़ा रहता है, उसकी खरीद नहीं होती। ललितपुर जिला उत्तर प्रदेश में है, वहाँ उड़द पैदा होता है
जी,
खरीद नहीं होती, रात को मंडियां चलती है ललितपुर में। नेफेड खरीद करता है, 4 दिन में उनसे भाग जाता है, अभी तो करता ही नहीं। जिस मक्का की हम बात करते हैं, अकेले बिहार में इसी मक्का की फसल एमएसपी से नीचे बिकने में करीब 8,000 करोड़ का नुकसान है अकेले बिहार को। आप उनको फसलों के दाम दे दो।
जो बड़ी बातें सरकार की ओर से वित्त मंत्री निर्मला सीतारमण की ओर से की गई हैं, जल्दी से मैं अपने दर्शकों को बताते हुए फिर अगला सवाल आपसे पूछूंगी। देखिए, प्राकृतिक खेती पर सबसे ज्यादा जोर दिया गया है। अगले 2 सालों में 2 करोड़ किसानों को बाकायदा इसका समर्थन दिया जाएगा। तिलहन क्षेत्र में आत्मनिर्भरता की बात कही गई है, बड़े पैमाने पर क्लस्टर ताकि सब्जी उत्पादन को बढ़ावा मिल सके। कृषि अवसंरचना में डीपीआई की बात इसमें कही गई है और 400 जिलों में डिजिटल फसल सर्वेक्षण की बात कही गई है, झींगा ब्रूट स्टॉक्स की बात कही गई है, सहकारी क्षेत्र के राष्ट्रीय सहयोग की भी बात कही गई है। 6 करोड़ किसानों की जानकारी लैंड रजिस्ट्री पर करवाई जाएगी। 5 राज्यों में नए किसान क्रेडिट कार्ड जारी किए जाएंगे और इसी के साथ ही साथ सरकार का जो फोकस है वह सरसों, मूंगफली, सनफ्लावर, सोयाबीन जैसी फसलों पर भी है।
फसलों पर तो है, बात घूम फिर कर कीमत कौन देगा?
आप एमएसपी पर गारंटी चाहते हैं?
एमएसपी गारंटी में यह होगा कि सरकार को जितनी खरीद करनी वो कर ले। जो व्यापारी सस्ते में खरीद करता है वो उसके कम पे खरीद ना करे, ये गारंटी कानून बन जाए एक। आप बढ़ाने की बात करते हो, किसान तो बढ़ा रहा है,
माइक आप ऊपर से पकड़िए।
किसान तो बढ़ा रहा है ना, लेकिन उसको कीमतें नहीं मिलती, वो कर्जे में चला गया। आप एक तरफ प्राकृतिक खेती की बात करते हो, दूसरी तरफ नैनो यूरिया को बढ़ाने की बात करते हो। वो फर्टिलाइजर है जिसका इस्तेमाल किसान करता है और वो जबरदस्ती सरकार उसको देती है और उसका कोई लाभ उसका नहीं है।
अब उधर वाले कहते हैं कि राकेश टिकैत तो हर अच्छे काम में भी नुक्स निकालते हैं।
नहीं,
और हमने देखा है सरकार की ओर से जितने भी बजट आए उसमें एक ही रटाया उनका जवाब रहा। उधर दूसरे पक्ष वालों की ओर से लगातार ये कोई भी अच्छी बात आपको नहीं लगी है? आज कृषि क्षेत्र के लिए जो व्यवस्था की गई है सरकार की ओर से,
अगर सोलार्स को छोड़ दे वो कितनी सब्सिडी उस पर देंगे और वो क्या इसी बजट से जाएगा क्या? तो वो थोड़ा सा
अलग बजट की व्यवस्था
की गई है।
ये 1,52,000 करोड़ से अलग सोलर की व्यवस्था
की गई तो उसका थोड़ा ठीक लगता है कि सरकार उस पर काम कर रही है, ठीक है, लेकिन दूसरे उस पर नहीं काम कर रही। और ये जितना पैसा है नाम किसान के लिखा जाएगा, आप इसको देख लेना किस किस सेक्टर में जाएगा।
लेकिन राकेश टिकैत जी, चूंकि पश्चिमी उत्तर प्रदेश में हम बैठे हुए हैं, अगर सिर्फ यूपी की ही बात करें, 25 करोड़ की आबादी वाला राज्य, यहाँ पर पूर्वांचल के किसानों की अलग समस्या रहती है, पश्चिमी यूपी की अलग समस्या।
In terms of those were reactions from some of the farmers. Subhash Garg has some new details. He's pulled out from the budget details about how the incentives for employment are going to work. Yes, Mr. Garg.
So this is the scheme, the scheme number 1 for the incentive-linked employment, the first-timers. What it says is that the scheme will provide 1 month wages, not 1 year, to all persons newly entering the workforce in all formal sectors. The direct benefit transfer of 1 month's salary will be made in 3 installments to the first-time employers as registered in the EPFO up to 15,000, though the eligibility is up to 1 lakh. So those who have salary up to 1 lakh will receive maximum 15,000
for 1 month.
For 1 month, and it will be paid in 3 installments of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So it's not
a game changer.
So it's only for 1 month.
It's only 1 month.
So if you give an incentive for 1 month, how does that Harsh Gupta encourage employment generation in the long term?
So the employer will have to think that for the remaining months, what do I do?
No, but if you give an incentive for only 1 month, how does it encourage job creation?
This is only the first scheme. There is a second scheme on manufacturing, third scheme on EPFO, fourth. So the point is, together, does it move the needle from the incremental new hire through contract employer to on the payrolls?
No, Punita Sinha, if you give an incentive for 1 month, does that then encourage any real-world employer to enhance the number of people he has on his payroll?
No, not at all. In fact, you yourself had shown earlier capacity utilization has been low, job creation by the private sector is low. How much is this really going to change? It's a lot of administrative burden that you're putting on an employer. I don't think it's really going to move the needle.
Okay, Rahul Garg joins us. He's a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers. He's an expert on direct tax. There's been some rationalization of the tax slabs. Do you want to explain how that's likely to play out and how that benefits the middle class? Mr. Garg, welcome.
Thank you so much. I just want to make a mention that I am no more a partner with Pricewaterhouse.
Yeah, but go ahead.
But in terms of the benefit to the middle class and benefit to the people who are following the new tax regime, it is important to know that the benefit comes only to those people who are following the new tax regime. And as Finance Minister said, that new tax regime is being followed by quite a lot of number of people. Now it has been made even more attractive. And the more attractive it has been made for 3 counts. 1, the slab rates have been recasted. And the second, the standard deduction has increased, and second, NPS deduction has been provided. So once the standard deduction increases, NPS is provided, and slab rate are recasted, as the finance minister mentioned, that a person could benefit up to 17,500 rupees in a year. So the fact that earlier also people were following the new tax regime, now it is becoming more attractive. So more people will follow the new tax regime.
That's a fair point you're making, that an effort is being made to try and make the new tax regime as attractive as possible and get more people to switch out of it. Mr. Garg, you were wanting to complete the argument you were making.
So these three things we need to actually understand fully, because whether it's a game changer or whether it's another scheme.
Sure.
So the first one I described.
Yes.
The second one says that the government will also provide incentive for EPFO contribution for 4 years of employment. In the first 4 years, at a specified rate.
3,000 rupees is the third scheme.
No, that's the third scheme.
That's the third scheme.
So here it says specified rate. Now, what is that specified rate? We don't know.
The third scheme?
And the third scheme is for non-manufacturing guys. For them, up to the salary of 1 lakh per month, they will be paid 3,000 rupees per month for 2 years towards EPFO contribution.
Yeah.
So this is the EPFO contribution being paid for some more.
This
Is it therefore more
So the
about the
government also
messaging?
makes a contribution to Employee Provident Fund. So
this
apart
is
from
the
the company and the individual,
Yes.
the government will make a
This is
contribution.
the government contribution.
For the first 4 years, but the amount has not been specified, at least in summary I have right.
And that's what I was saying. We have had these
For 4
schemes
years.
in for last 7 years. The latest one was...
No, but how does government
No, let me
making a
explain.
contribution to Employee Provident Fund in
It
addition to the
helps.
employer and the employer, how does that help?
So we had the scheme called ABRY, Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana, which was brought after the COVID, in which the government paid both the contribution, the employers as well as employees' contribution to the EPFO. So that finished only last year, and there was no one. So I think this has been brought in to substitute for that scheme.
The point is both the employer and employee are incentivized if some contributions are made by the government to be on the proper payroll as opposed to subcontracted.
But it
The
won't
point is,
increase.
No, but what is the
magnitude
impulse?
enough
The
or not?
impulse is, think of it from the employer's mindset. Does it incentivize the employer to get people on board? Even if the government makes a contribution to the employee's provident fund account and there's an extra contribution coming in from the government side, how does it change the psyche of the employer?
Because you can attract more people. It depends on the
That's-
magnitude of the incentive.
Rahul, I think the government comes out every month with an EPFO data.
Yeah, which is itself.
And if you look at carefully, there are 3 columns in that. Number 1, the new employees who joined. Number 2, who left, who stopped paying contribution. And third, who earlier left have started making contribution again. So this dynamics of new coming, leaving and going is actually encouraged a whole lot by this kind of stuff.
Okay, so I want to go across to Anshuman Magazine. Anshuman Magazine is chairperson and chief executive of CBRE, a leading real estate expert, Mr. Magazine. One of the big announcements was that an effort will be made to try and digitize land records in urban areas, in rural areas, for farmers. Now, this has been spoken of, but from the best as you understood, what impact do you think this could have on India's real estate sector and the fact that the government is now making digitization of all land records such a key priority?
For me personally, this was the biggest takeaway from the budget, because land is not an issue only for real estate. We need land for manufacturing, we need land to put hospitals, hotels, anything we do, we need land. And the biggest challenge in India was, of course, on title of land. And we've all discussed that there are lakhs of cases which are pending in the courts and why our court system is slow. As you would know, large amount of litigation in our courts are because of land disputes. Plus, what happens is, because of not getting proper title, investments are not going in as much as they should go in, and government has not been able to collect as much taxes as they can. So if this is implemented, of course, the key is implementation. If this is implemented,
Do you think it's likely to take?
A big needle mover. Yes, it'll take time. Some of the states have already done it. It also depends how determined the government is. It is, it can be done. Like I said, I hope they have some timelines, and this will have a major impact on the economy, not only real estate, and it's really unleash a huge improvement. And can you imagine both investments going into real estate? The budget talked about urban development for doing anything manufacturing. One of the big deterrents for a lot of manufacturers coming here again is to assemble land, or for anybody to do anything really in this country. So if this is implemented, this will have a major impact on our economy.
How do you see this play out, Rajiv Kumar? The idea that you want to digitize all land, it's currently very paper-based, discretionary, jugaad, especially in rural areas. It's not as fixed and proper.
This is an idea whose time had come 10 years ago. It's wonderful that they're doing. The states which have digitized their land record and the land sort of on the ground, as it were, Telangana, for example, have benefited a great deal. This will remove a huge amount of corruption, and at the ground level, at the tehsil and all at that level, it will facilitate land transfers, developing a market in land for both the rural areas and the urban areas, and it will take away, as it were, a lot of harassment that goes on today in land acquisition. And therefore, it will also be very good for the manufacturing industry, because they will be able to, for example, I know that in Telangana, you could order a parcel of land sitting abroad, and you could identify it on the map there and make the purchase even online. If that happens for the country as a whole, I think it's a big move forward.
Also, formal credit offtake.
It was a long time coming, but thankfully,
by the way,
for farmers,
there is already a scheme going on called Dil Rahm, which is there for last, and which has digitized a lot of records. I want to again see what is the difference being made now. What is the delta? So let me see the content, and then
the difference that is being made is the central government has now accepted the importance of digitizing all land records, because it was a state government.
No, it is a central government scheme. Dil Rahm is a central government scheme.
Maybe it is just.
There is also a unique land record being assigned, number being assigned to all the 30 odd crores records.
Can I just comment? I think
going on
it's fine even if it is already been there. A renewed focus and emphasis is good enough. To add to Rajiv ji's points, the point is, if somebody wants credit, if you have a digital land record, your credit offtake becomes much more formalized. You don't have to pay usurious informal rates, which are double, triple digits on an annualized basis. So those kind of things, it's
a win-win. The patwaris get less commission.
Exactly.
The patwaris get less commission. You don't have to go.
The question is terrible.
Litigation also goes down.
Punita, you wanted to make a point on taxes. What's the point you want to make?
We used to think that India has reached like a tax stability regime, but this budget makes me believe that they've tinkered on taxation on so many different things, whether it's customs duty, long-term gains, income taxes, that there is no more tax stability that we can expect in the next few years. There could be further changes every year, whether it's on capital gains, whether it's on income tax, whether it's on customs duty. Just a few years ago, they raised customs duty on gold. Today, they brought it down.
When the big political messaging is no tinkering, continuity. Anshuman Magazine, do you buy that argument that Punita Sinha is making, that it's, now, for example, long-term capital gains increased to 12.5. It could increase further next year. We don't know where it's going to. There's no message that this is a cap. And they've tinkered and tweaked. For example, they raised gold customs duty. Now they brought down gold and silver. So you now are back in the old days where you never know what's happening. And it could increase, it could decrease, depending on what the financial and political imperative of that moment is.
Certainly, this is disconcerting, and the fact is there were so many other list of requests on actually reducing taxes which were completely ignored. And in fact, every budget, what I've been saying is that the government is widening taxes, which is fine, but logically, whenever you widen taxes, you need to reduce taxes, right? But we continue to widen taxes, but don't reduce taxes, maybe in some places we do. So I would still sort of, I hope there is, better sense that while we reduce taxes, while we widen taxes, reduce tax rates while we widen the tax net.
Reduction of customs duty on gold and silver to what extent do you think this is likely to
Alright.
reduce corruption?
Imagining
Okay, sir, 1 second, one at a time, please. Yes.
No, this is again a very welcome move because the more you raise the customs duties on gold, the more you encourage smuggling. And more you encourage smuggling, the more you are getting caught in that whole black.
The counter is you don't want people investing in non-productive assets like gold, right? Which is why you had customs duty high in the first.
The point also is that if you are successfully able to monetize gold with the household, which Subhash tried actually, then it's not non-productive investment. It can be very productive investment. In fact, even today, companies like Muthoot and others, you can get money, you can monetize the gold holding that you have, and this is why there's a big effort at the moment. So I think the custom duty on gold imports had been reduced to 2 and 2.5%. Then it was successively raised by this government. I think it's a good one to reduce.
Large parts of our audience will be urban middle class who will wonder what is in this budget for us. What have we got out of the budget, positive and negative? If they were to look at this budget closely and wonder about that, what would that be? What would it give them a feeling of cheer today? And what would make them feel that there is really nothing yet again for the Indian middle class?
So for the tax-paying middle class, about 8 to 9 crore households who file the returns, the fact that standard deduction has been increased by about 25,000 rupees and the minimum taxation limit has been raised in the alternative scheme from 6 to 7, which she counted gives a certain kind of benefit, about 17,500 what she mentioned. I think that's a very clear gain for them. But to my mind, this is much lower than what they were expecting. This is not the, I don't think they will feel very happy about it. So they'll say, all right, something has come, but not really something.
In fact, there was an expectation that given that the fiscal situation is looking healthier, that there will be a cut in income tax rate for the middle class, which has not happened. So I think that's a disappointment.
That hasn't happened in a long time.
And again, that 30% slab, which kicks in at 15 lakh, remains unchanged. So 15 lakh is a very low income level
Can
today.
I just slightly disagree there?
Yes.
The point is Indian per capita income is just slightly above 2 lakh rupees. Like median income is around 1 lakh something. In the US, the median, the mean income is $80,000 and the income tax kicks in around $20,000. Here, it is the exact opposite. It's 2 lakh rupees, it kicks in at 8 lakh rupees. So from the government's point of view, there is not much space. The people who think are middle class are actually 90 percentile people in this country. They're not actually 50 percentile.
Rajiv is a very strong point that Harsh is making. Yes, accepted that the audience here is middle class. But the point is that the economic policies cannot continue to be made to just keep favoring the better offs, which is what it is. If the tax exemption rate is 5 lakhs and the per capita income is 1.65, 1.85 lakhs, you're already very well off when you're there. So therefore, the economic policies have to be made for those who are at the bottom of the pyramid and for their increasing
this government has faced the charge in the past, particularly with the corporate tax, where that it's the top, the creamy layer who's really benefited. That large part in the middle of this country, which is the driving engine of India, whether you can claim that they actually earn 2 lakhs a month, they are the ones who claim they haven't got enough out of the government.
Which is why
why do I not get tax breaks, let's say, for education, for health? That's where I want...
No, let us be consistent, which is why, for example, LTCG has been raised from 10% to 12.5%. So when it goes from 10 to 12.5%, it most disproportionately impacting the wealthy who are investors. Then we cannot criticize that. Then say inequality is rising because the so-called middle class is not getting cuts. Again, the 50 percentile of this country is earning around 1 lakh per year on a per individual basis. So I'm just saying the middle class is a sense of psychology which all of us share, but it is not a numerical middle class in a 50 percentile sense. It may sound harsh, no pun intended, but that is the reality.
Okay.
But there's been no penalization of the ultra rich, which also across the world, as you know, there is this billionaire tax and all of that coming. But in India, the dividend tax has not been increased, so the promoters...
Dividend is at the marginal rate.
But you saw what happened during the election.
DDT was removed.
Someone raised the possibility of an inheritance tax or wealth tax, and immediately there was a reaction. I mean, it's all very well.
They will always be, but
so taxation in this country just matters to those who are outside the tax.
Dividend is taxed at the full income.
Get a sense of size.
But wealth tax is very much justified, of course, for the reasons which you said. They will not bring
people will end up making trusts. I don't think wealth tax, inheritance tax
wealth tax is
No, but let's not be crazy. One second, Rajdeep.
That's not the
One
way.
second. This will impact you also. The fact is that if you keep doing these things, like the billionaire tax, for example, that Brazil has brought,
Are you saying Rajdeep
it
is a
will.
billionaire?
No, I'm saying this will only encourage people who are well-to-do to move to places like Dubai and park their money overseas.
My point is, A, they've already, a large number of them have already moved, and B, when you gave them the kind of tax bonanza that they got a few years ago.
First, you're telling them invest.
No. What did they do after that?
Spend in the India story. Then you tax them in this fashion. Why will they stay? Punita Sinha she'll never come back from Boston. She'll stay in Boston.
Let's not
I'm not coming back.
I'm not saying that tax.
This is
I'm
true.
only asking you. I'm asking you that one of the criticisms of this government has been that they've benefited the people at the top of the pyramid, the creamy layer, who didn't actually proportionately give back to the economy. Those in the middle. Now we can define the middle in different ways.
Even
have not had the same amount
the
of
government
benefits,
which raised the
and
top
there has
rate.
been welfareism for those at the bottom. Now we thought the Kisan Samman Nidhi would increase. As of now, it hasn't. I was surprised. I thought 6,000 would go up to 8,000 was the expectation. That's not happened. Surely that could have been done.
The first Nirmala Sitharaman budget actually raised taxes, the marginal tax rate, including surcharge, on the highest earners. It was only partially rolled back last year. So they are paying around 40% taxes, including on their dividends. The LTCG has gone up, STCG has gone up, STT has gone up. So to say that the most well-off are not...
I am one of those who's been hit. I am one of those who's been hit.
Disproportionately, people in liquid assets are likely to be the well-off.
This constant refrain about
so let's not play both sides.
Tax reduction hasn't led to corporate investment.
Yes.
I think it's past. Because, as the Axis Bank, research study points out, they've invested about 35 lakh crore in the last 2 years. The investment rate has increased up by 19%. So the corporates are coming up. But now there is an issue of demand creation, which this government is trying to address through employment generation.
So let's ask Mr. Tyagarajan that question. He's the managing director at Blue Star. Mr. Tyagarajan, this question about whether the incentives that have been rolled out for employment generation will actually lead to new jobs being created. From what you've understood from your position and from the others you've been speaking to at CII, what impact do you think these incentives will actually have on the job market?
Thank you, Rahul. It's a pleasure interacting with you. I think it would. For CII, I head the consumer durables and electronics sector. And the job-linked incentives that we asked for in the pre-budget memorandum, that has happened. I am particularly happy about the internship scheme of 5 years, 100 million youth to be trained. That is win-win-win. The youth gains, the corporates gain, and the country gains. Now, as far as our sector is concerned, there were two things that propelled us. Number one is connected with the 15% tax for new manufacturing units. One would have expected one more scheme would have been announced with a sunset period of another 3 years. That's a disappointment. The other one is connected with the PLI scheme extensions. But having said that, we are very happy about the fiscal discipline that is being maintained. That is laudable. Now, inconsistent with the current government's theme, it's not some big incentives are being rolled out in order to get there, whether we are getting the fundamentals correct. So our focus has been building scale. The consumption will have to go up in India so that we are able to reach that scale to compete with China elsewhere in the global markets. The 1 lakh crore rupees which was set aside for R&D and innovation, that has to come into operation. We have to implement it faster if we have to really get there. Domestic value addition will have to happen. And we should learn to compete with China. I hold the view that this China plus one, we take for granted that one is India. I don't think we are anywhere near that at all. We will learn to compete with them by allowing them to be here also under FDI. The economic policy has laid out that they will consider, as long as Chinese companies follow the law of the land and they are going to do the domestic value addition, we should compete with them in order that we compete with them in US or Europe. And so our direction has been clear that we have to do a lot to become competitive. And I am happy with regard to a few things that have happened. Perhaps the 15% tax for new manufacturing units could have been done. That didn't happen. Lastly, the green credit scheme, it's a very important one in order to encourage people to follow life, like a 5-star air conditioner or a 5-star appliance. That green credit is a very important tool. That is how the Japanese did it. That's how Chinese did it. And I thought there will be a mention that wasn't there. But having said that, fiscal discipline, JLI or the job linked incentive and the internship scheme make me happy.
Mr. Tyagarajan, thank you for joining us. We'll come back to you for more later. That's Mr. Tyagarajan from Blue Star. Yes.
So this internship scheme is only in 500 top companies.
Yeah. BSE 500. No, what? What
that
500?
has not been defined.
Broadly
They will define. So internship can be only in 500 top companies.
What does top mean?
They will explain.
Listed 500 top.
We don't know.
Turnover or profit or whatever it is.
How all of this will presumably be explained at a subsequent date?
Internship is only if you are in the 500 companies.
Only those 500 top companies will be able to have this internship scheme.
Benefits.
In which the government will pay 5,000 rupees per month for 1 year.
But what is the problem there?
No, there is no
issue.
There is a lot of problem because you are the 500 top companies, if you define, let us say, by market capitalization, are highly technologically oriented companies. We may not even have the internship requirement of this kind.
No, and they'll hire as per their outlook. They won't hire because of some internship program.
Why limit to 500?
It's a good beginning, I would say.
That's the beginning.
It's a beginning.
Because otherwise
you don't
But
know
sir,
why
look at it this way. No, 1 second. I'll try and explain. So I'll try and ask you this question. Now, these are 500 companies, which are the biggest companies. They already have an employment outlook, which is fixed as per their management plans. Just because a new scheme is being brought in, they'll take a few interns.
Rahul,
but how does that encourage job creation?
Rahul, it is an internship.
Yes.
An internship is about learning job skills on the job. And if you are actually encouraging even technologically oriented companies, as Subhash is saying, even better, because then they will be incentivized.
No, so I've understood. So you get the internship,
Yes.
you get a certain amount of money, the intern gets a certain amount of money. How does it ultimately encourage job creation?
Because it generates skills
More
which are
employability.
required in the
But
industry.
their employment outlook is still determined by their own
But I give
management.
you an example. There is the Maharashtra Open University scheme run by Vivek Sawant, who used to be the head of the CDMA, the Param Computer. He runs an open university. All his students are interns and apprentices. The placement record is 120%. Which is nowhere else.
Rajiv.
Yes, but how many such instances are there?
Can I come in just for a moment?
No, just a minute. Because internship is part of education. You are studying somewhere, then you do internship.
Yes.
Where are 1 year internship programs in education schemes?
No, because internship can also be, part-time.
Or
That's
immediately
not
after.
internship.
But you see, Harsh, we've seen the challenge, the visual challenges we've seen in different parts of the country. The moment any company opens up, say, 100 jobs or even 200 jobs, there are 30,000 applicants for those 200 jobs. Many of them are perhaps overqualified for those jobs. Many of them perhaps are underqualified. There is a huge problem at the moment between demand and supply. So companies you're giving directionally companies an incentive. As most of the corporates are also coming, they're pleased with this job linked incentive scheme. Is it enough unless you are able to create employability, you're able to match skills to the jobs that are available? There's a shortage of jobs available at the end of the day.
No. Since you mentioned a shortage of jobs, let me set the record straight. There's a shortage of white collar jobs with lifelong tenure. There is not a shortage of jobs.
Shortage of employable jobs.
No. I'm sorry. As somebody who is earning 60 to 70,000 rupees driving an Uber in Delhi or Mumbai, he is very well employed. But the point is, for every Uber job, there are not 10,000 people standing outside. Whereas you'll get a PhD for even a relatively low-level government job, because he or she knows that they will, once they get the job, they will retire with a pension, with health benefits, etc. So the problem is not jobs. The problem is white-collar jobs with lifelong tenure,
which you can outsource to your cousin and not do.
Of course, and
school teachers,
a lot of
government schools,
which is why in Uttar Pradesh, for example, there are protests against government school teachers being recorded their attendance digitally. So this whole narrative of not there being jobs is not factually correct. It's a job.
There is a the problem. There is a crisis. You're saying that the problem is that you have enough jobs at C and D category. At the bottom of the pyramid, there are enough. As you go above, there are fewer jobs or fewer.
Many of these jobs are paying more money than even A or B jobs. But the problem is job tenure is not there.
No, the fact
lifelong security is not there.
This is a bit like the pakoda wala argument, right? The problem with that argument is those who are seeking jobs don't think they have a job. The government and those in government can keep claiming that they have some kind of employment.
It's not claiming. The people actually are working in Ubers as Olas,
but there are still enough people clamoring for jobs. Thousands of people coming each time there's a job vacancy.
Sure, because
and it's also a global problem. So let's acknowledge that it's not just restricted to India.
Of course, it's a Chinese problem. It's a Western problem. My simple point is, if you have government jobs with salaries much higher than median per capita income, you'll have security till you die, then of course the demand for that in a society like India, where even unfortunately the age is linked to your job requirement, is very high. It is a sociological economic reality of India. To say there are not enough jobs is a separate point.
But I'm saying there's a big political pushback on that issue because people are not accepting this argument that there are jobs.
There can't be government jobs for everybody.
Of course they can't. Yes,
reality check.
Yes.
The government's own PLFS, Periodic Labor Survey, last 22-23, it says that over 5 years we have had growth from about 49% to 57%.
On the labor force participation.
On the labor force participation. You know what is the biggest constituent of that growth?
Self-employed.
No. There is a category called unpaid labor in family enterprise.
No, that's not the biggest.
No, that is the biggest.
56% of those employed are self-employed. Of the self-employed, 18.7% are those
23%
in family unpaid labor.
23% of the total
but this is all right. You see, the point is, Rahul, the point is, the government has accepted that the employment is a challenge.
I think that you see the messaging. You're right, Mr. Garg, that many of these schemes are going to have to be tested.
Yes.
Are these schemes simply there on paper? Will they actually result in some game-changing?
That is precisely the point.
That's the question. The fact, though, is at least the government has signaled that what we are calling what we call jobonomics or naukrinomics is at least finally top of the agenda. She started her speech today with employment. In the past, and we have spent the last 1 hour, 30 minutes out of that on employment, which is perhaps a recognition that times are changing, and thank God for that.
Mukundan joins us. He's the chief executive at Tata Chemicals. Let's bring in a voice from India Inc. on whether the incentives that have been provided for employment and internships, the kind of impact they have on the employment outlook and the psyche of a corporate titan like you, Mr. Mukundan. How do you see this play out in the real world?
So in terms of I think it's a very welcome step. We have been highlighting to government that jobs, skills and employment should be one of the key priorities, and this budget does go in the right direction. In terms of the employment incentives and the incentives for internships, training which has been provided, firstly it will skill the workforce of tomorrow. Secondly, including when somebody comes into the company, we know for first few months the person is less productive till he becomes fully productive, because we've got to train those people to be completely adapted to the industry they come in. I think that's the gap the government has filled in terms of saying we will come and support during that period. So you got to think of this as not to be an enabler for the industry to make everybody fully productive, fully skilled, to be employed in a way that they are contributing positively to industry.
Now, how would a company like yours actually work on this scheme? What would you do? Honestly, given the kind of incentives, what would a company like yours actually do now?
We actually run a very, very large apprenticeship program in Gujarat in a district called Devbhoomi Dwarka, and our apprentices and interns actually get employment not just in India but in Middle East and overseas. We will certainly expand that ambit of the program. In addition to that, I think the finance minister also has brought in a large proportion of women participation, including the focus on self-help group, which also we run in that part of India. So this is actually going to provide a large impetus in terms of income generation as well as employment generation.
So you think that this will...
No, but does it change your employment outlook? Let's assume somebody comes and does his internship, is now more skilled for Tata Chemicals than he would have been otherwise if he'd started on day one. But does it at the end of the year make you hire more people than you would have otherwise? That's ultimately the debate that we were having. Does it actually lead to more jobs being created, Mr. Mukundan?
Yeah, fundamentally, I think if you look at it, jobs is one issue, but I think if you look at the industry and speak to MSME and so many other companies, they don't have training facilities which we may have, the big companies, big 500 companies may have, which is where the focus of the finance minister has been. I think those smaller companies will now get access to skilled workforce. If you meet the MSMEs, they clearly say one of the drawbacks of their growth has been the issue of access to skilled labor. And I think this is going to provide that skilled labor for them to move forward. So really I'm saying, rather than say that the companies providing training are the ones which are going to provide employment, because when we do training, I think only maybe 15-20% of those trainees probably get jobs in our company or around our company, but most of them actually get jobs other places. For example, they would join construction sites which are run by other companies. They would join, let's say, distributors and maintenance the workshops of many of the companies which have them all over India in automotive sector. So really, this is about skilling people to get meaningful jobs. See, we have focused a lot on this country on graduation, but not on skill. I think this whole shift towards skilling is very, very important. And I think that shift is what the government has brought about. They have allowed the participation of the private sector into this. It's a welcome move.
And I think, Rahul, while we focus on the union budget, the challenge also will be for the state governments. Much of India's challenges don't lie in Delhi, they lie at state capitals. If the state capitals are embrace many of these schemes, and some states have already done it. We're looking as if this is, Nirmala Sitharaman has done something brand new. In states like Tamil Nadu, many of these schemes are already in practice. 40%, I was staggered to know that 40%, for example, of women workforce in India comes from Tamil Nadu alone, which is working in industry and factories. These states have already incentivized women. They've done a lot already on the ground. If all other states were able to, in some way, also collaborate, cooperate, then you might actually be able to scale up. Otherwise, frankly, I think what Mr. Garg says is a concern that, these schemes will exist on paper, they will provide some signals, but won't go beyond the signal and messaging.
Mr. Mukundan, thank you for joining us. We'll come back to you for more later. Punita Sinha, we're seeing the markets recover to some extent. The BSE now down 550 odd points. It was down 1,000 plus earlier. Why do you think the markets are recovering ground?
No, see, there is, first of all, the flow of money like through SIPs. That isn't going to suddenly change overnight. So that is a plan that will continuously, funds have been sitting on cash because the market valuations were stretched. So they're using some of these dips to maybe buy back because the long-term health is still good.
How does this impact the outlook of foreign portfolio investors looking at the India story at this moment with the current price-earning multiples?
Well, I think they'll wait for more dips. Because the change in tax regime does raise, as I said earlier, the concern that do we have a stable tax regime, and this is directionally not great and it could signal more increases in the future.
Just one quick data point.
Yeah, and I just also wanted to say that, this will cause some reallocation in asset holdings of investors.
Away from equities.
Away from equities, a little bit more towards bonds, towards gold. Today, if you see, gold stocks are up big. So already it is happening. So there is that asset allocation
during the festive
shift.
season, there's likely to be a big scramble to buy some gold.
Yeah, so there'll be some more, and real estate, because land records are going to get digitized, focus on, so I think those asset
The government
classes,
signaling wanting to move money away from the public markets
to other
towards
asset
either
classes.
startups because the angel tax is gone,
Yeah.
or towards gold, or towards real estate,
or towards bonds to a little,
or towards bonds. How does this, Harsh, impact all the international bond indices which were already making space for India? Do Do you think it consolidates and speeds up that
India
process?
remains by far the best risk-reward, large emerging market story for bond investors in the world. Just to give you a comparison, China's 10Y is at 2%. We are around 7%, slightly less today, 6.9 something. So it remains, and of course, the rupee has been remarkably stable for 1.5 years. So they think in terms of dollar returns. But even on equities, I would slightly disagree and say, right now the Nifty 50 multiple is trailing 23 times something. Foreign investors are likely to come back less because of any specific tax issues in India, more because of Fed rate cuts in the US, the dollar cycle turning.
No, but they have other international opportunities. The question is,
but there is no.
How attractive is
It's a
India?
week or two of uncertainty.
I'm probably less than that, because I think MSCI EM index, India has gone from 6% of the index to 19% right now.
I have to, get Harsh to stop saying Morgan Stanley emerging countries index unless he explains what that is.
So globally, these emerging market
This
indices,
bang.
globally emerging market indices for equities, India was at 5 or 6% 3-4 years ago. Right now, it's 19-20%. China went down from 40% to 24% right now. Russia has been removed from those indices. South Korea is about to be reclassified as a developed markets. So if you think from the point of view of an investor sitting in New York or London, there are not many bright opportunities at scale in the emerging markets beyond India.
Okay, Janmay Sinha joins us. He's the chairperson at Boston Consultancy, joining us now on this broadcast. Thank you very much, Mr. Sinha. The biggest focus has been on the real-world impact of the employment-linked incentives and the internship schemes that have been brought, and whether this fosters new job creation. You're a consultant. These are the kind of questions you grapple with all the time. So what's your response to that? We don't have all the minute details, but broadly, directionally, do you think it fosters new job creation?
Look, I think, when we talk about job creation at the level of 7-8 million jobs a year, these don't get created overnight. I like the focus on total factor productivity improvement, which is looking at all the reforms, which was the 9th point that was made in the overall, that it will actually look at everything from an efficiency perspective. And it will also try and reduce the amount of interference at the state and municipal level that the governments currently do. See, a budget, from my perspective, this was a very comforting budget, because I saw the fiscal deficit target at 4.9 going down to 4.5, a relook at GST and increasing its ambit later, relooking at direct and tariffs again from a point of view of getting out any of the hitches that are there in the system. So trying to get into the economy and taking out all these small arbitrages here and there. That is what is needed. No country will ever be able to provide 7, 8, 9 million jobs. These have to be created by increased efficiency in the factors of production being used. And that is the focus. Now, how much is being spent on health? How much is being spent on education? How is it being spent? Those are important questions. But all of this is within the geopolitical and the Indian political economy. As a Bihari, I can't contest a little bit of money going to Bihar. But otherwise, it is a tough act to look at it geopolitically in an era of industrial policy being springing across all over the world. And if with tariff 60% tariff rates, if Trump becomes president, so it's a interesting period.
One of the things the economic survey said is we should attract Chinese investments into India because there's a trade imbalance. So get foreign direct investment from China into India. The government hasn't explicitly in the budget said anything about China, quite naturally, but in the text of the economic survey and in the implicit messaging, do you think we're now reaching a zone where there will be increasingly a thaw with China on the question of investment? The next time a BYD wants to come in, are they more likely to get clearances?
Look, you know better than me that last year India's trade with China increased despite all the rhetoric. So when you are dependent on so many core imports from China, to talk about the fact that you will not trade with China is just not practical. And if you can actually get investments in India which you can control, then that's not a bad thing. But in which areas? I think one will have to go into the nitty-gritty to understand. Just getting more manufacturing and building up capabilities in manufacturing in India is not a bad thing. But that does not change the geopolitical tension that India and China will continue to experience. But we will all need to know areas of conflict and areas of accentuated contestation, and those areas, and even some areas of cooperation. So all those will continue to happen. And as India becomes a middle power and stuff, it will have to be more agile how it deals geopolitically with all these different countries. But at a basic level, it has to strengthen its financials and, reducing fiscal deficit, improving our credit rating. All that really helps us stand on our own feet and go up even further with MSCI indices and others, as was being discussed earlier. So I really am now also hoping that credit rating agencies look at India again carefully, because our debt to GDP ratio will be coming down, and some of these increases in taxes on capital gains is because of a little bit of the froth in the market, which everyone is getting concerned about. The level of the market capitalization to GDP is quite high, and everyone should start expecting a correction, but no one likes it.
Okay. Mr. Sinha, I appreciate you joining us. I appreciate all our guests joining us. It's been a long
just for the
day.
time.
No, just for the time being. We've got our colleague Preeti Chaudhary joining us. Rahul's heading off to CII, so he'll get a greater sense of how corporate India is looking at this budget. One thing that I would love to know from them, the so-called regulatory cholesterol, which everyone speaks about, how much of it has actually gone? I'm still waiting for that budget which actually really does remove the regulatory cholesterol. There's a lot of tinkering, some of it good this time, some of it maybe uneven, but that hasn't yet happened, Rahul. So maybe they will be able to tell you that one day.
We're not done, far from. We're firing up the budget intelligence dashboard. There's a lot of allocations which the finance minister spoke about but didn't mention how it had changed. We'll compare that with what was announced in the interim budget and then what was announced previously. So you actually get a sense of, because there are words and then there are numbers. The words, frankly, are quite meaningless. It's the numbers that tell you the story. We'll try and decode the real story of the budget in our continuing coverage of Modinomics 3.0. I want to thank our guests for joining us this morning, and we'll have a lot more for you on the other side. Stay with us.
Just came around to say hello. I just came around to say hello.
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra. Flip the script.
Hello, Moto.
टैक्स पे टैक्स फाइलिंग है नेक्स्ट लेवल ईज नेक्स्ट लेवल ब्रीज क्लियर टैक्स इधर नहीं तो किधर
क्लियर टैक्स पे टैक्स फाइलिंग है नेक्स्ट लेवल ईज नेक्स्ट लेवल ब्रीज क्लियर टैक्स इधर नहीं तो किधर
Just came around to say hello. I'm so fly. You took a nosedive. Careful when you play on my level. For you it's so hey hello.
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra. Flip the script.
Hello, Moto.
टैक्स फाइलिंग की डेडलाइन मीट करो विद नेक्स्ट लेवल ईज नेक्स्ट लेवल ब्रीज क्लियर टैक्स इधर नहीं तो किधर
टैक्स फाइलिंग की डेडलाइन मीट करो विद नेक्स्ट लेवल ईज, नेक्स्ट लेवल ब्रीज। क्लियर टैक्स, इधर नहीं तो किधर।
by LIC जिंदगी के साथ भी जिंदगी के बाद भी co-powered by new Seltos with Kia Connect. Tech is now badass.
नई ऊंचाई पर ले जाने वाले इस महत्वपूर्ण बजट के लिए मैं सभी देशवासियों को बधाई देता हूं। वित्त मंत्री निर्मला सीतारमण जी और उनकी पूरी टीम बहुत बहुत बधाई की पात्र है। साथियों, ये बजट समाज के हर वर्ग को शक्ति देने वाला बजट है। ये देश के गांव, गरीब
for these two states in a manner.
It's not reflected in the fiscal deficit number.
Yeah. Sure.
You have still 0.2%.
Which is again a strength of this government.
Exactly.
I mean, when you look at 4.9% fiscal deficit, the government will claim that they've got that completely, they've got their fiscal management completely at least on track.
In long term, this is with reference to what she announced as 4.5. But 4.5 itself is a very high fiscal deficit.
4.9.
No, now 4.9, but the goal of 4.5% itself is a very large fiscal deficit. Our Act says 3%.
Yeah, 3.5%, 3%.
No, but nobody so far even bothered about the financial...
No. In the first term, it's the same government.
Yes, but now they're making an effort to at least tend in that direction.
That is what I am saying.
To compliment them for being financially conservative and not being reckless.
Given the scale, I mean, one thing that the Modi government has tried to do is put its welfare schemes on scale. I mean, when you talk of 3 crore Awas Yojanas, they've tried in a way to saturate welfare schemes. So naturally there will be some pressure. They've had headroom because of the RBI dividend. The question that I have is, at the end of the day, do you see this as a budget with political messaging or a budget that has set us on the roadmap for the next 5 years or 25 years, as the Prime Minister said? I saw nothing, Rahul, with due regard, to suggest what our roadmap for the next 5 or 25 years is.
Let's take the two big ideas. I want Subhash Gar to come in on the employment-linked incentives. The Congress is saying, "Ye to hamara idea tha." The BJP is saying, "We've brought it, so obviously it's our idea." But the big question is, by giving these incentives to employees and employers, will it actually foster job creation in your view?
So, the emphasis on employment and job creation is fabulous.
Yes.
It has to be there, it must be there. But when you go into the contents of it, I think we will need to go more. My sense, the way I read, is that a lot of it is still in the form of giving some PF kind of contributions, which are there for last 7 years. We have ABRY, before that we another scheme which was doing for last 7 years. So is there a new way?
No, but do they work? So does a financial incentive for job creation work in this fashion?
May not actually work. It adds to the new EPFO numbers, etc., which we see quite often. How would the new internship scheme would act?
No, so I'll come to internships in just a moment.
A friend of mine just sent me a message saying that I think one of the schemes that they've got for employment link is based on the fact that your first job gets you 1 lakh and more. Now, many of them are arguing, where am I going to...
up to 1 lakh.
Up to 1 lakh and more.
1 lakh and more. Up to 1 lakh. It is up to jobs that pay 1 lakh.
Up to 1 lakh.
Yes.
Now, the question is that how many jobs eventually will actually benefit from this? How many employers will actually take advantage of this ELI scheme?
That is very important. Does something substitute? Or it's actually a new job?
But even if it substitutes, at least those jobs are now in the formal market.
One goes out, another comes in.
No, but the biggest question, Harsh, is will this limited incentive encourage any employer to add to the number of people he employs because of this incentive
To
that's
add
been
to
given.
Mr. Garg's points, it is possible that instead of informal jobs on the margin, that job might be now become a classified formal sector job.
To claim the incentive.
Yeah, but then that helps the employee to get some kind of protections in terms of hiring and firing, some pensions, some at least 2-3 months of cooling off period if they have to,
Then the
resign from
employer
job.
will compare the
Yes,
advantages
exactly.
of getting
So the
this
trade-off-
incentive versus the disadvantage of having this guy formally
in
on
an
his
informal
rolls.
sector. Exactly. So it moves the
Rajiv,
needle
why do you
towards
think it will work? Because that's one of the big ideas, the employment-linked incentive. It sounds phenomenal in theory. Does it, in your view, could it work in practice?
No, I think it will work in practice. Because the employer for the first time will have the incentive not to hire contract labor, but to hire formal labor on its rolls. I think that's a very big idea. And
25 करोड़ लोग गरीबी से बाहर निकले हैं। ये जो न्यू मिडिल क्लास बना है, ये बजट उनके सशक्तिकरण की निरंतरता का बजट है। इन नौजवानों को अनगिनत नए अवसर देने वाला बजट है। इस बजट से शिक्षा और स्किल को नई स्केल मिलेगी। ये मिडिल क्लास को नई ताकत देने वाला बजट है। ये जनजातीय समाज, दलित, पिछड़ों को सशक्त करने की मजबूत योजनाओं के साथ आया है। इस बजट से महिलाओं की आर्थिक भागीदारी सुनिश्चित करने में मदद मिलेगी। इस बजट से छोटे व्यापारियों, एमएसएमईज को, यानी कि लघु उद्योगों का, उसकी प्रगति का नया रास्ता मिलेगा। बजट में मैन्युफैक्चरिंग पर भी बल है, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पर भी बल है। इससे आर्थिक विकास को नई गति मिलेगी और गति को भी निरंतरता मिलेगी। साथियों, रोजगार और स्वरोजगार के अभूतपूर्व अवसर बढ़, ये हमारी सरकार की पहचान रही है। आज का बजट इसे और सुदृढ़ करता है। देश और दुनिया ने पीएलआई स्कीम की सफलता देखी है। अब इस बजट में सरकार ने एम्प्लॉयमेंट लिंक्ड इंसेंटिव स्कीम की घोषणा की है। इससे देश में करोड़ों करोड़ों नए रोजगार बनेंगे। इस योजना के तहत जीवन में पहली नौकरी पाने वाले युवा की पहली तनख्वाह हमारी सरकार देगी। स्किल डेवलपमेंट और उच्च शिक्षा के लिए मदद हो या फिर 1 करोड़ नौजवानों को इंटर्नशिप की योजना, इससे गांव के, गरीब के मेरे नौजवान साथी, मेरे बेटे बेटी देश की टॉप कंपनियों में काम करेंगे। उनके सामने संभावनाओं के नए द्वार खुलेंगे। हमें हर शहर, हर गांव, हर घर एंटरप्रेन्योर्स बनाना है। इसी उद्देश्य से बिना गारंटी के मुद्रा लोन की लिमिट को 10 लाख से बढ़ाकर 20 लाख रुपए किया गया है। इससे छोटे कारोबारियों, विशेष रूप से महिलाओं, दलित, पिछड़े, आदिवासी परिवारों में स्वरोजगार को बल मिलेगा। साथियों, हम सब लोग मिलकर भारत को ग्लोबल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हब बनाएंगे। देश का एमएसएमई सेक्टर मध्यम वर्ग से जुड़ा हुआ है। एक प्रकार से एमएसएमई सेक्टर की ओनरशिप मध्यम वर्ग ही है और इसी सेक्टर से गरीबों को ज्यादा से ज्यादा रोजगार भी मिलता है। छोटे उद्योगों की बड़ी ताकत, उस दिशा में हमारा अहम कदम है। इस बजट में एमएसएमईज के लिए ईज ऑफ क्रेडिट बढ़ाने वाली नई योजना का ऐलान किया गया है। मैन्युफैक्चरिंग और एक्सपोर्ट्स इकोसिस्टम को हर जिले तक ले जाने के लिए बजट में अहम घोषणा की गई है। ई कॉमर्स, एक्सपोर्ट हब्स और फूड क्वालिटी टेस्टिंग के लिए 100 यूनिट्स, ऐसे कदमों से वन डिस्ट्रिक्ट वन प्रोडक्ट अभियान को गति मिलेगी। साथियों, ये बजट हमारे स्टार्टअप्स के लिए, इनोवेशन इकोसिस्टम के लिए ढेर सारे नए अवसर लेकर आया है। स्पेस इकोनॉमी को बढ़ावा देने के लिए 1000 करोड़ रुपए का फंड हो, एंजल टैक्स हटाने का फैसला हो, ऐसे कई सारे कदम इस बजट में उठाए गए हैं। साथियों, रिकॉर्ड हाई कैपेक्स इकोनॉमी का एक ड्राइविंग फोर्स बनेगा। 12 नए इंडस्ट्रियल नोड्स, देश में नए सैटेलाइट टाउन्स का विकास और 14 बड़े शहरों के लिए ट्रांजिट प्लान्स, इससे देश में नए इकोनॉमिक हब विकसित होंगे और बहुत बड़ी संख्या में नए रोजगार बनेंगे। साथियों, आज डिफेंस एक्सपोर्ट्स रिकॉर्ड स्तर पर है। इस बजट में डिफेंस सेक्टर को आत्मनिर्भर बनाने के लिए अनेक प्रावधान किए गए हैं। आज पूरी दुनिया में भारत के प्रति आकर्षण बढ़ा है और भारत में टूरिज्म के क्षेत्र में नई संभावनाएं बनी हैं। टूरिज्म क्षेत्र गरीब और मध्यम वर्ग के लिए कई अवसर लेके आता है। इस बजट में टूरिज्म क्षेत्र पर भी विशेष बल दिया गया है। साथियों, एनडीए सरकार ने पिछले 10 साल में ये सुनिश्चित किया है कि गरीब और मध्यम वर्ग को लगातार टैक्स से राहत मिलती रहे। इस बजट में भी इनकम टैक्स में कटौती और स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन में वृद्धि का फैसला लिया गया है। टीडीएस के नियमों को भी सरल किया गया है। इन कदमों से हर टैक्स पेयर को अतिरिक्त बचत होने वाली है। साथियों, देश के विकास के लिए भारत के पूर्वी क्षेत्र का संपूर्ण विकास पूर्वोदय के विजन द्वारा हमारे इस अभियान को नई गति, नई ऊर्जा मिलेगी। हम पूर्वी भारत में कई महत्वपूर्ण इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जैसे हाईवेज, वाटर प्रोजेक्ट्स और पावर प्रोजेक्ट्स का निर्माण कर विकास को नई गति देंगे। साथियों, इस बजट का एक बहुत बड़ा फोकस देश के किसान है। अन्न भंडारण के लिए दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी स्कीम के बाद अब हम वेजिटेबल प्रोडक्शन क्लस्टर्स बनाने जा रहे हैं। इससे एक और छोटे किसानों को फल, सब्जियों, अन्य उपज के लिए नए बाजार मिलेंगे, बेहतर दाम मिलेंगे, तो दूसरी ओर हमारे मध्यम वर्ग के लिए फल सब्जियों की उपलब्धता बढ़ेगी और परिवार के लिए पोषण भी सुनिश्चित होगा। कृषि क्षेत्र में भारत का आत्मनिर्भर बनना समय की मांग है। इसलिए दलहन तिलहन की पैदावार बढ़ाने के लिए किसानों को मदद की घोषणा की गई है। साथियों, देश में गरीबी समाप्त हो, गरीब का सशक्तिकरण हो, इस दिशा में भी आज के बजट में प्रमुख घोषणाएं की गई हैं। गरीबों के लिए 3 करोड़ नए घर बनाना तय हुआ है। जनजातीय उन्नत ग्राम अभियान सैचुरेशन अप्रोच के साथ 5 करोड़ आदिवासी परिवारों को मूलभूत सुविधाओं से जोड़ा जाएगा। इसके अलावा ग्राम सड़क योजना 25,000 नए ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों को ऑल वेदर रोड से जोड़ेगी। इसका लाभ देश के सभी राज्यों के दूर दराज गांवों को मिलेगा। साथियों, आज का बजट नए अवसर, नई ऊर्जा लेकर आया है। ये ढेर सारे नए रोजगार, स्वरोजगार के अवसर लेकर आया है। ये बेटर ग्रोथ और ब्राइट फ्यूचर लेकर आया है। आज का बजट भारत को दुनिया की तीसरी सबसे बड़ी आर्थिक ताकत बनाने के उस पूरी प्रक्रिया में कैटलिस्ट का काम करेगा। विकसित भारत की एक ठोस नींव रखेगा। सभी देशवासियों को बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं।
After Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the Union Budget for 2024, the Prime Minister also elucidating what Nirmala Sitharaman said, where the focus on this year's budget of 2024, number one, job creation, women, farmers, youth and the poor. He also, the Prime Minister reiterated the stress on infrastructure development where the country is concerned and moving towards solid job creations. Also talking about how this budget will go on to help small industries, the middle class, as well as where the farmers are concerned. The budget empowers poor and the farmers of India is something that the Prime Minister reiterated. Nirmala Sitharaman, even before presenting the Union Budget 2024, said that the focus this time will be on 4 major classes: the poor, women, youth and the farmers. And the Prime Minister reiterating that, also saying that this budget will prove to be a big boost when it comes down to the middle class of the country. From changes in income tax slabs under the new tax regime to revision in custom duties, but importantly, the biggest thrust of this Union Budget 2024, viewers, a push towards job creation. And the Prime Minister reiterating that as well. Well, on the other hand, where infrastructure is concerned, massive bonanza being announced on infrastructural development across the country. Especially 2 states have got a fair chunk, one would suggest, keeping them in good humor. And those are the states of Bihar and the states of Andhra Pradesh, run by the 2 key allies of the Bharatiya Janata Party, the JDU as well as the TDP. On the other hand, the Prime Minister elucidating on how MSMEs will give employment to the poor. He spoke of the apprenticeship scheme. He spoke of manufacturing export prioritized in this particular budget of 2024, and ultimately also saying, revisiting and speaking of the startup dream and saying this will give a big push where startups in India are concerned. Of course, the opposition has come out in strong contention and criticized the budget, some of them walking out of the parliament as well. And most MPs of the TMC staged a walkout saying that not much was offered where the state of Bengal was concerned. And like I said earlier, 2 states have been kept in very, very good humor, and those are the states of Bihar and the states of Andhra Pradesh, run by key allies of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Nirmala Sitharaman's massive 15,000 crore bonanza for Andhra Pradesh, announcing a host of developmental projects for Andhra Pradesh in this year's budget. The announcement now is significant as Chandrababu Naidu in Andhra Pradesh turned out to be, like I pointed out earlier, a kingmaker after Lok Sabha results. Now, in a strategic move, the centre has pledged to offer 15,000 crore assistance for the development of Andhra Pradesh capital city. This initiative aims to boost infrastructure, create employment opportunities and enhance the overall growth of Andhra Pradesh. The budget boost was well received by the Andhra government, with its netas thanking the Modi Sarkar.
Andhra Pradesh Reorganization Act. Our government has made concerted efforts to fulfill the commitments in Andhra Pradesh Reorganization Act. Recognizing the state's need for the capital, recognizing the state's need for a capital, we will facilitate special financial support through multilateral development agencies. In the current financial year, 15,000 crore rupees will be arranged with additional amounts in future years. Our government is fully committed to financing and early completion of the Polavaram irrigation project, which is the lifeline for Andhra Pradesh and its farmers. This will facilitate our country's food security as well. Under the Act, Andhra Pradesh Reorganization Act, for promoting industrial development, funds will be provided for essential infrastructure such as water, power, railways and roads. In Kopparthi node on the Visakhapatnam-Chennai Industrial Corridor and Varavakal node on the Hyderabad-Bengaluru Industrial Corridor. An additional allocation will be provided this year towards capital investment for economic growth. Grants for backward regions of Rayalaseema, Prakasham, North Coastal Andhra, as stated in the Act, will be provided.
तहे दिल से शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहूँगा नरेंद्र मोदी जी को, जिन्होंने एक वादा किया था कि आंध्रा की देखभाल हम करेंगे और उन्होंने आज किया है बजट के रूप में। जो कैपिटल की बात आती है, 5 साल जब जगन मोहन रेड्डी की सरकार आंध्रा में थी तो नो कैपिटल स्टेट कर दिया था, अमरावती को पूरी तरह से डिस्ट्रॉय कर दिया। वहाँ पे किसानों के साथ जो हमारी एक एग्रीमेंट थी उस सबको डिस्ट्रॉय कर दिया। तो उसको एक बल देने के लिए आज 15,000 करोड़ का पैकेज एक जो दिया हुआ है, उसके लिए हम अपने किसानों की तरफ से, स्टेट की तरफ से हम शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहेंगे। ये केवल एक बजट वाला इशू नहीं है, ये इमोशनल इशू है आंध्रा के लिए। उसको एक जगह मिला है आज बजट में। और पोलोवरम प्रोजेक्ट जो लाइफलाइन है आंध्रा के लिए, उसके बारे में भी उन्होंने बोला है कि वो ऑन टाइम वो रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी के साथ कंप्लीट करेंगे।
My colleague Apurva, who's joining us from Amravati for more on this. Apurva, this is exactly what the TDP wanted. They had kept their head down and they were hoping that they get what they demanded as their pound of flesh. And it seems it's been delivered. Chandrababu Naidu today would be in good humor.
Well, that's right, Preeti. In fact, it's been quite a phenomenal, outcome from the budget there for the state of Andhra Pradesh. In fact, Amravati, which is a long-standing, much-needed capital there, there's been a lot of funds that have been allocated by the union government there with respect to Amravati. 15,000 crores. Not only that, we're also seeing that there's going to be special focus that is going to be given to the much-awaited Polavaram project, which is still incomplete, as well as special districts like Rayalaseema and other districts as well, they're going to be given a lot of importance and development. That's what this budget has shown for the state of Andhra Pradesh. We are seeing this after quite several number of visits that Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu in the NDA alliance had made to and from Amravati here to go to Delhi. He had met with Union Minister, he's met with the Prime Minister, he's met with the Home Minister Amit Shah, Mr. Modi there. All of these talks that had taken place over the last 2 months since the NDA has come into governance here, and that's what we are also seeing in terms of what has been allocated in the budget. Remember, Chandrababu Naidu had specifically talked about the development of Amravati there as the capital, much needed capital for the state of Andhra Pradesh. Last 5 years, there hadn't been any capital there. In fact, for the last decade, there hasn't been any capital for the state of Andhra Pradesh. In fact, and we're also going to see how important it is for the development as well, for the state of Andhra Pradesh as well. The funds as well as for agriculture, we're seeing a lot of demands that have taken place, as well as for an overall roundness as well, that we are seeing this budget having allocated for the state of Andhra Pradesh. Preeti.
Appreciate you joining us, Apurva. We're going to come back to you. Andhra Pradesh kept happy, but not just Andhra. The other ally, JDU, and the state of Bihar also kept very, very happy in this budget. After the special status snub, centre's big boost now for Bihar in the budget session. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced that the centre will provide financial aid to Bihar for developmental projects, from new connectivity projects to improved sports infrastructure. Bihar got the best of the budget. The centre will build new airports, medical colleges, sports infrastructure. The centre will spend a total of 15,000 crores to build this infrastructure in the state. The government's proposed 26,000 crores for various road projects. New expressways between Patna and Purnia and Buxar and Bhagalpur will also be built. An additional 2-lane bridge over River Ganga will also be constructed. Bihar has also been given a rupees 11,500 crore flood mitigation package. Nalanda University will also be promoted as a tourist spot apart from being an educational centre. Meanwhile, RJD took a pot shot at the centre and called the budget allocation a lollipop. RJD said that youth are still waiting for employment.
On the Amritsar-Kolkata industrial corridor, we will support development of an industrial node at Gaya. This corridor will catalyze industrial development of the eastern region. The industrial node at Gaya will also be a good model for developing our ancient centers of cultural importance into future centers of modern economy. This model shall showcase Vikas B, Virasat B in a growth trajectory. We will also support development of road connectivity projects, namely 1. Patna Purnia Expressway, 2. Buxar Bhagalpur Expressway, 3. Bodh Gaya, Rajgir, Vaishali and Darbhanga spurs, and 4. Additional 2-lane bridge over River Ganga at Buxar at a total cost of 26,000 crore rupees. Power projects, including setting up of a new 2,400 megawatt power plant at Pir Painti, will be taken up at a cost of 21,400 crore rupees. New airports, medical colleges, and sports infrastructure in Bihar will be constructed. An additional allocation to support capital investments will be provided. The requests of Bihar government for external assistance from multilateral development banks will be expedited.
All right, let's cut across to my colleague Aditya Weber, who's joining us live from Patna. Aditya, the JDU would be very, very happy. This is what they were aiming at. They did not want special status ultimately, but they wanted a sizable chunk of allotment when it came down to the budget 2024. They've extracted that pound of flesh.
Well, exactly. As far as the JDU is concerned, of course, the leaders are apparently very happy over the major allocation that has been done by Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman as she spoke her budget speech today. Notable is the fact that the way things have panned out, the opposition is still targeting the NDA government for, you can say, downsizing the prospects of Bihar as far as the special status is concerned. But then the NDA leaders and the JDU leaders in particular, they are very happy about the allocations that have been made. We happen to talk to Bihar Minister Vijay Kumar Chaudhary, who categorically blamed the erstwhile UPA government for the status not being accorded by the center to the state of Bihar because of the interministerial group which actually came out with its finding that the NDC guidelines categorically claim that the case of Bihar is not made out. But now that the budgetary allocations have been made, of course the NDA leaders from the state of Bihar, they are very happy. And notable is the fact that they are also trying to highlight the fact that when Rabri Devi used to be the chief minister and Atal Bihari Vajpayee used to be the prime minister, major allocations were done by the then NDA government to the state of Bihar, but then the Bihar government could not consume the funds allocated. So this time the funds have been allocated and the NDA leaders are now claiming that the entire fund will be consumed for the development of the state of Bihar. Preeti.
Appreciate you joining us, Aditya. We'll come back to you for more. Let's quickly dip in. All right, we are getting in news break coming in right now. Rahul Gandhi has taken on the Prime Minister over the bonanza to Andhra Pradesh and Bihar. Rahul Gandhi has just posted on the social media platform X, Kursi Bachao budget. Appease allies, hollow promises to them at the cost of other states. Appease cronies, benefits to AA with no relief for the common Indian. Where he says benefits to AA, practically meaning the two industrialists, copy and paste Congress manifesto and previous budgets. He also goes on to allege that the finance minister actually copy-pasted the Congress manifesto and the previous budgets of the Congress manifesto. The Congress alleging, especially when it came down to the apprenticeship or the internship scheme, it is exactly what the Congress manifesto had stated, and this is what the government has done. But a larger attack fronted by Rahul Gandhi, the leader of opposition in Parliament, at the Prime Minister, who has named or labelled this budget as Kursi Bachao budget, primarily suggesting that the states of Andhra Pradesh and the states of Bihar have been benefited at the cost of the rest of the country, primarily to appease them. Hollow promises to them at the cost of other states is what Rahul Gandhi has stated. Rahul Gautam, my colleague, joining us on the phone line for more. You know, Rahul Gandhi suggesting that this is a copy-paste of the Congress manifesto and Congress budget, and on the other hand, also attacking the Prime Minister and calling this a Kursi Bachao budget.
Absolutely, Preeti, and this is the stance that has been taken by Congress party, that how government has brought in this budget essentially to save the government and to appease the allies like JDU and TDP specifically, and how budgets, special allocations have been made these two states at the cost of other states. For example, we also saw Punjab MPs protesting and saying that why not once Punjab was mentioned in the SM speech. Similarly, the other MPs are also making the allegations. So Rahul Gandhi suggesting that this has been done at the cost of common taxpayers and giving respite to big crony, capitalists. And in fact, he also said that they have taken a cue also from Congress manifesto. For example, pledging money to those who are going to do the internship. So clearly, in a way, you can say the Congress MP is now increasing the heat. The leader of opposition is increasing the heat on the issue of budget. And you can expect that now Congress leaders will take this issue to the people and will certainly try to corner the government in Parliament in both the houses as well.
All right. Appreciate you joining us. Rahul Gautam there, getting us the Congress's perspective on the budget. But But a lot has gone down because in terms of political reactions, especially on the allocations to Bihar and Andhra Pradesh. Listen in.
बिहार में जो नेपाल से फ्लड आते हैं उसको सिर्फ बिहार का प्रॉब्लम मत देखिए। बिहार में नेपाल से जो फ्लड्स आते हैं बरसात के समय में तबाही मचते हैं, ये देश का समस्या है। इसको सिर्फ बिहार का समस्या क्यों बोलते हैं विपक्ष के लोग? ये बिहार क्या भारत का हिस्सा नहीं है? बिहार का समस्या, बिहार का फ्लड का समस्या सालों से चलते आ रहे हैं। इसको इतना बड़ा कदम इस बार मोदी जी ने उठाया है तो सबको इसको सराहना करना चाहिए, इसको वेलकम करना चाहिए।
हम लोग की मांग रही थी कि जब तक विशेष राज्य के दर्जे का दर्जा हम लोग को नहीं मिलता, स्पेशल पैकेजेस हम लोग को दिए जाएं। मैं धन्यवाद करूंगा मेरे प्रधानमंत्री आदरणीय नरेंद्र मोदी जी का, मैं धन्यवाद करूंगा हमारी वित्त मंत्री आदरणीय निर्मला सीतारमण जी का कि उन्होंने बिहार को जिस तरीके से स्पेशल पैकेजेस देकर, और मेरे लिए बिहारी होने के नाते खुशी की बात है और मेरी पार्टी लोक जनशक्ति पार्टी रामविलास ने हमेशा बिहार फर्स्ट बिहारी फर्स्ट के विजन के साथ आगे बढ़ने का काम किया है। इस बजट में बिहार फर्स्ट बिहारी फर्स्ट को भी धरातल पर उतारने के प्रावधान दिए गए हैं।
बिहार में जिस कहते हैं, बिहार में बहार है, एनडीए का सरकार है। बिहार को सुपर पैकेज के रूप में दिया गया।
हाँ, बिहार की चिंता हुई है तो मैं आपसे एक बात कहूंगा, अगर नेपाल की नदियां आती हैं तो पूर्वी उत्तर प्रदेश को प्रभावित करती हैं कि नहीं? उन पर काम होना चाहिए कि नहीं? पटना पुनिया सड़क बनेगी तो नेपाल के बॉर्डर और चाइना बॉर्डर की इसका की सिक्योरिटी बढ़ेगी कि नहीं बढ़ेगी? नालंदा देश का केंद्र है ना। बोध गया में महाबोधि टेम्पल में दुनिया के पर्यटक आते हैं ना। वही हाल है अपने विष्णुपद मंदिर का। तो राजगीर, नालंदा, बोध गया अगर टूरिस्ट बना हब बनेगा तो टूरिज्म बढ़ेगा, देश का भी विकास होगा।
सबसे पहले तो मैं नीतीश कुमार जी के प्रयासों की सराहना करना चाहता हूं, जिन्होंने एनडीए के साथियों के साथ बिहार के उत्थान और विकास के लिए निरंतर प्रधानमंत्री और वित्त मंत्री से विमर्श किया। एक दूसरा, टीएमसी के प्रतिनिधि के वक्तव्य से साबित होता है जिसमें वो कहते हैं कि ये बजट बिहार का है, तो ये बिहार के उत्थान का बजट है, ऐसा हमसे नाइतफाकी रखने वाले लोग भी मानते हैं।
लगातार हत्या हो रहा है, मर्डर हो रहा है, चोरी डकैती सब हो रहा है। मजदूरों को मजदूरी नहीं मिल रहा है, रोजगार नहीं मिल रहा है। किसानों का खाद बीज सस्ता करना चाहिए, महंगाई पर रोक लगाना चाहिए। पेट्रोल डीजल सब महंगा है, किसान क्या करेगा? बिजली, किसानों को बिजली भी नहीं मिलता है, झुनझुना है, रेलवे के झुनझुना है।
मांगा था स्पेशल पैकेज, मांगा था स्पेशल स्टेटस, और दिया क्या? वही ऑनगोइंग स्कीम को जोड़ के बता दिया। नई राजधानी के लिए क्या हुआ? कहा था ना बसाएंगे। जो आंध्रा जब निर्माण हुआ था, जो कहा गया था हुआ। 10 साल से जब से ये आए तब से हमारी सरकार तो नहीं आई। तो बिहार के साथ नाइंसाफ़ी, आंध्रा के साथ नाइंसाफ़ी, अब इन दोनों के मुख्यमंत्रियों को तय करना चाहिए कि इस सरकार से समर्थन वापस लेंगे या चालू रखें।
All right, so this has been the cumulative political response to the budget, understandably so. The opposition, number one, not very happy where the allocations or the massive infrastructural allocations that have been given to the state of Bihar and the state of Andhra Pradesh. And that primarily stems from the fact of the tweet by leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi, where he has called it Kursi Bachao budget, where he has alleged that this government is directing the budget to practically appease two states, and at the cost of that, others will suffer. On the other hand, you've had the Bharatiya Janata Party come out very strongly defending the budget, the government and its allies defending the budget, suggesting, especially where Bihar is concerned, it was a state in need and this budget allocation was desperately wanted in the state. Meanwhile, opposition clearly not happy, which I pointed out earlier, with the budget, taking on the Modi 3.0 budget, Opposition leaders said this year's budget is not a budget for India, but a budget for allies, which we just pointed out. Congress trained its guns on the centre for skipping the census yet again in the budget this time. Bengal breathed fire on Modi government for snubbing the state. Sena UBT too took on the centre for not including budget for Maharashtra's development, calling it Pradhan Mantri Sarkar Bachao Yojana. The opposition said this year's budget is nothing but a bid to save Modi Sarkar, since the BJP is dependent on its two crucial allies of JDU and TDP. All right, let's cut across and get in reactions. Naresh Trehan joining us right now, Chairman, Managing Director, Global Health Limited. Mr. Trehan, how do you rate the budget this year, especially where health and pharma sector is concerned?
So you break it up in three. Overall budget seems to be well balanced. But if you look at the allocation for health, there has been very little. So whatever one part which is good is the fact that the cancer drugs, the duty on them have been reduced or eliminated. Then that will help people who are undergoing cancer treatment, which is quite expensive. And cutting of duty will actually help them to be able to save a fair amount on their treatment. So that's a good thing. The other thing is that a small succor has been given to X-ray tubes and flat panels, but very little otherwise. So what we had requested was, and it has been always there, is the fact that overall allocation to health budget has not been changed. That would have helped, because there are many schemes that need to be well funded, including Ayushman, which is a very important scheme to provide care to the last person standing, every citizen of India. So now we feel there are two things that are challenges right now which were not addressed. One is that healthcare is GST paid. We pay on our inputs GST, but we don't get any set off. So that causes distress to the providers, especially the smaller hospitals. The second thing is that the gap between delivery of care and payments from government schemes is quite delayed. So what happens is, again, it puts stress especially on the smaller hospitals. So the request is basically, and it can still be done, is that the different schemes can be funded better or with a higher allocation, and also the fact that there are overall, the fact that we pay large duties on our equipment that we import from overseas, with the changing parity between rupee and dollar, which keeps increasing, that the duties have gone up proportionately, also increasing the input cost. So anything the government could do to reduce the input costs will only be passed on to the patient, so that healthcare becomes more and more affordable by all. That's our overall goal.
Mr. Trehan, custom concessions on cancer drugs, on X-ray machines, you see that as a silver lining for something, and correct me if I'm wrong, which you largely see where the health, infrastructure push is concerned as disappointing in this budget. But, Mr. Trehan, do you also feel maybe the government should have pushed, or there was a lack of public investment announcements in healthcare, which of course add more pressure to the private healthcare system?
Yeah, of course they should. That's what I'm saying. The overall allocation should be more, and that includes everything. And especially all government spending will go on public infrastructure, which is most welcome. Because ultimately the goal, overarching goal is the same, that to provide health care to every citizen of India at an affordable cost, and no matter who pays for it. The other part is that the good part that is in the budget is on the skilling. Because I also am the chair of the Health Sector Skill Council, and that will help to actually the favorable environment that has been created for skilling and for internships, and the incentives given are most welcome. So on the other hand, like I'm saying, there is good news for all the people, because hospitals are employing the largest, for every bed created, we employ 5 to 6 people. So that's a good thing to happen for us also, that as skilling improves, the quality of healthcare professionals will also improve. And also there is a big benefit that we can do as a country, because the whole world is actually short of healthcare providers. So we have a big opportunity that if we skill our people well, they can go and serve around the world, which will be a big favor in favor of our country as far as inward remittances and the pride of the country is concerned.
Mr. Trehan, the fine print on the, on the apprenticeship scheme that you mentioned is still, unclear. But would you reckon, especially in the health sector, that it is something that could be implemented on the ground level?
So, there is a noise in the studio. If you can talk a little louder, it will help.
Mr. Trehan, just one quick question before we let you go, sir. Would you reckon, because the fine print on the apprenticeship scheme is still right now unclear, but in the health sector, do you see this scheme actually working out on a basic ground level?
Yes, of course. Like you said, there is still a little bit of mystery about which is not clear as it clarifies, but I'm sure it will be inclusive of all skills. So Health Sector Skill Council will also benefit in our ability to train more and more and be able to induct more and more people, because they will reap the benefits of these schemes.
So bittersweet is what we'd call it for the health sector, Mr. Trehan. Would you agree?
Yeah, you're right. I agree.
All right, sir. Appreciate you joining us. Thank you. Dr. Naresh Trehan there giving us his perspective, especially where the health and pharma sector is concerned, and the budget allocation that not too happy, but does see a silver lining there. Meanwhile, let's get back to all the politics that is swirling around the budget of 2024. Opposition clearly not happy with the budget, and that reflected in the various reactions that came in, where opposition ranks across the party actually labelled this an attempt to save the government and only look at appeasing allies, which is the JDU and the TDP. Listen in.
सरकार बचानी है तो अच्छी बात है कि बिहार को, आंध्र प्रदेश को कुछ विशेष पैकेज या विशेष योजनाओं से जोड़ा गया है। बेरोजगारी इन्होंने बढ़ाई है। 10 साल में जो इतनी बेरोजगारी बढ़ गई, उसको कैसे कम करें, और वो भी आधी अधूरी नौकरी से। आप 2 साल की, 1 साल की या कुछ ट्रेनिंग करा करके नौकरी या रोजगार का सपना दिखा रहे हैं। देश का नौजवान अपना भविष्य बनाने के लिए पक्की नौकरी चाहता है, और फिर जो आधी अधूरी नौकरी है, क्या उसमें आरक्षण होगा?
I understand their political compulsions of pandering to the demands of their alliance partners from Andhra and Bihar, and they have, I think, acceded to their demands to some extent. But they have also taken some elements from our manifesto, particularly the apprentice scheme. So we'll have to see whether they have also announced a lot of new schemes, which are tongue-twisting names which I can't pronounce, whether they are new schemes or whether they're just rebranding old schemes, and we'll have to see what has happened to the old schemes as well.
I think this budget should be called Pradhan Mantri Sarkar Bachao Yojana, because they have realized that this government, if it has to be saved for the next 5 years, they would need their alliance partners, and these alliance partners need to be kept happy. 2 states that have been focused of is Andhra Pradesh and Bihar. After denying Bihar a special status, after denying Andhra Pradesh a special status, they've given funds. What is unfortunate, however, is that Maharashtra continues to be ignored by the centre. Maharashtra has become a state where you keep sucking in money from, a cash-rich state where you keep taking money from, but do not give in money for its infrastructure needs and its development.
All right, we're going to go into a quick break, and when we return, we're going to focus on the biggest possible announcement in the budget 2024, or rather the biggest highlight, the big jobs push in Modi 3.0 budget. Centre announces employment-linked incentives. Details coming up on that. Do stay with me.
To say hello, I'm so fly. You took a nosedive. Careful when you play
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra. Flip the script.
Hello, Moto.
टैक्स फाइलिंग की डेडलाइन मीट करो विद नेक्स्ट लेवल इज नेक्स्ट लेवल ब्रीज क्लियर टैक्स इधर नहीं तो किधर
टैक्स फाइलिंग की डेडलाइन मीट करो विद नेक्स्ट लेवल इज नेक्स्ट लेवल ब्रीज क्लियर टैक्स इधर नहीं तो किधर
Nothing is there. রুরাল জব স্কিম কিছুই বাড়ানো হয়নি, কিছুই করেনি, এবং আমাদের রাজ্যে আদৌ দিয়েছে কিনা সেটা আমরা দেখতে হবে। গত 3 বার বাজেটে ছিল না, বইতে দেখতে হবে। নো আমাদের 1,75,000 কোটি টাকা না কমানো হয়েছে, 1,71,000 crores pending with the central government. Nothing is being given to us. सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट हमारा उसका पास पड़ा है 1,71,000 रुपीज, लेकिन इसमें एक पैसा भी नहीं दिया गया। उपरंतु बंगाल को वंचित किया है। 1,71,000 কোটি টাকার উপর আমরা পাই সেন্ট্রাল গভর্নমেন্টের কাছে। আমাদের টাকা এখান থেকে জিএসটি তুলে নিয়ে গেছে।
All right, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of News. Do stay tuned. On the other side, news and updates continue.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Who have fallen for the scam have ended up losing a lot of money, including a Chandigarh man who lost a whopping 1 lakh rupees exactly with the same modus operandi. Have you too been a victim to such scam? What can you do really to be safe here? Here's what Mumbai's citizens really have to say.
So have you ever received a scam text message or a phone call?
Yes, I have. That happens, I guess, to all of us.
Yeah, it was just today when I received an email from an unknown email ID on my official work account saying, hi, I'm not able to reach to your mobile number. Could you provide me with an alternate contact number? It was very obvious that the scammer didn't have any of my mobile numbers and a random email ID was tried.
Have you ever received a scam text message or a phone call?
Yes, multiple times.
How do you differentiate between a scam message or a phone call versus a legitimate one?
So I think the first thing is that I have an app installed in my phone which shows me if an unknown number is calling me, it shows that it's a spam call, so I don't receive it at all.
Generally in scam messages there are either a link is attached or the text message is generally unusual.
You have to see that the links are verified or not, because the verified links comes with a proper message.
And what measures do you personally take to stay safe online?
So now it has happened with me so many times that I often end up recording such incidents. Now whenever such a scam happens and I realize that it's a scam, I record it and share it with my friends so that they also understand that okay, this is how I can be scammed as well.
There are a few accounts on Instagram which keep you updated and they keep telling you about the new scams that are coming in the market. So I tend to follow those. I try to look at a few YouTube videos where they tell us about the scams.
Before trusting anybody, just make sure that the guy or the girl you're sending details to.
So usually with context to messages, I usually block the unusual messages. And with respect to online, whenever I do transaction online, I usually do it from the Chrome, and generally I don't give my card details to any fishy sites unless and until I'm aware of the site.
Presented by LIC जिंदगी के साथ भी जिंदगी के बाद भी. Co-powered by new Seltos with Kia Connect. Tech is now badass.
Good afternoon, welcome. I'm Pooja Shali. It's the big budget day, and with the announcements that have come in, the focus may have been Andhra Pradesh and Bihar, but what next? In case you missed it, all the highlights and snippets in this hour. Let's begin first with headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi appreciates Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's budget, says budget empowers poor and farmers of India. Modi's Har Ghar Entrepreneur pitch hails employment-linked incentive scheme.
आज का बजट भारत को दुनिया की तीसरी सबसे बड़ी आर्थिक ताकत बनाने के उस पूरी प्रक्रिया में कैटलिस्ट का काम करेगा. विकसित भारत की एक ठोस नींव रखेगा.
It's the big budget bonanza for Bihar and Andhra Pradesh. 2.66 lakh crore rupees for rural development in Andhra Pradesh, while 26,000 crore for road connectivity in Bihar. But political showdown over that has already erupted. Opposition is fuming, calling it a budget to save Modi's chair. Big jobs push in Modi 3.0 budget. Centre announces employment-linked incentives. 1 month wage for new entrants in the workforce. Internship scheme in 500 firms for 1 crore youth. Aim to employ 5 million additional people. Meanwhile, there's marginal relief in the personal tax. Standard deduction hiked from 50,000 to 75,000 in new regime. Deduction is on family pension enhanced from 15,000 to 25,000. Salaried employees will now be able to save 17,500 in income tax. Let's go more specific. Mobile and accessories will likely get cheaper as custom duty has been slashed. Gold, silver, platinum also likely to get cheaper. So in case you missed, let me take you through now the highlights and break it down for you about what precisely was announced in the Union Budget 2024. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presenting her 7th straight and record budget, focusing on youth entering into the workforce. They got special bonanza as well. Here's what happened. First, Prime Minister Modi congratulated the Finance Minister, saying that the budget was a booster for youth and on employment. Announcement was made for the job sector, including employment-linked incentives, 1-month wage for the new entrants in the workforce, monetary support for employers, job creation in manufacturing specifically, as India intends to become a manufacturing hub. But there will also be a scheme to skill about 20 lakh youth. The budget basically proposes that women-specific skilling programs will also be initiated. There's a 4-year support scheme and internship scheme in 500 firms for 1 crore young men and women. The aim will be to employ 5 million additional people, one-time assistance of 6,000 rupees for interns and 5,000 incentive per month for the interns as well. These are the details on your screens. One by one, we'll break it down for you. Let's listen in first to some of the highlights as spoken by the Finance Minister.
साथियों, रोजगार और स्वरोजगार के अभूतपूर्व अवसर बढ़ ये हमारी सरकार की पहचान रही है। आज का बजट इसे और सुदृढ़ करता है। देश और दुनिया ने पीएलआई स्कीम की सफलता देखी है। अब इस बजट में सरकार ने एम्प्लॉयमेंट लिंक्ड इंसेंटिव स्कीम की घोषणा की है। इससे देश में करोड़ों करोड़ों नए रोजगार बनेंगे। इस योजना के तहत जीवन में पहली नौकरी पाने वाले युवा की पहली तनख्वाह हमारी सरकार देगी। स्किल डेवलपमेंट और उच्च शिक्षा के लिए मदद हो या फिर 1 करोड़ नौजवानों को इंटर्नशिप की योजना, इससे गांव के गरीब के मेरे नौजवान साथी, मेरे बेटे बेटी देश की टॉप कंपनियों में काम करेंगे। उनके सामने संभावनाओं के नए द्वार खुलेंगे।
Priority 2, employment and skilling. Employment linked incentive. Our government will implement following 3 schemes for employment linked incentive as part of the Prime Minister's package. These will be based on enrollment in the EPFO and focus on recognition of first-time employees and support to employees and employers. Scheme A, first-timers. This scheme will provide 1 month wage to all persons newly entering the workforce in all formal sectors. Direct benefit transfer of 1 month's salary in 3 installments to first-time employees as registered in the EPFO will be up to 15,000 rupees. The eligibility limit will be a salary of 1 lakh per month. The scheme is expected to benefit 210 lakh youths. Scheme B, job creation in manufacturing. This scheme will incentivize additional employment in the manufacturing sector linked to the employment of first-time employees. An incentive will be provided at specified scale directly both to the employee and the employer with respect to the EPFO contribution in the first 4 years of employment. The scheme is expected to benefit 30 lakh youth entering employment and their employers. Scheme C, support to employers. This employer-focused scheme will cover additional employment in all sectors. All additional employment within a salary of 1 lakh rupee per month will be counted. The government will reimburse to employers up to 3,000 rupees per month for 2 years towards the EPFO contribution for each additional employee. The scheme is expected to incentivize additional employment of 50 lakh persons. Participation of women in the workforce. We will facilitate higher participation of women in the workforce through setting up of working women hostels in collaboration with industry and establishing creches. In addition, the partnership will seek to organize women-specific skilling programs and promotion of market access for women SHG enterprises. Skilling program. I'm happy to announce a new centrally sponsored scheme as the fourth scheme under the Prime Minister's package for skilling in collaboration with state governments and industry. 20 lakh youth will be skilled over a 5-year period. Industrial training institutes will be upgraded in hub and spoke arrangements with outcome orientation. Course content and design will be aligned to the skill needs of industry, and new courses will be introduced for emerging needs. Skilling loans. The model skill loan scheme will be revised to facilitate loans up to 7.5 lakh rupees.
So I'm going to now go across to the Confederation of Indian Industry, the CII, where India Today's Rahul Kanwal is in conversation with top industry experts. Rahul, over to you.
The big focus of the union budget for FY 24-25 has been on jobonomics. An admission by the government that jobs need to be taken as the central economic and political priority, and they've thrown some financial ammunition at trying to address this challenge. On the one side, you've got an admission. The question, though, is will it work? The government introducing employment-linked incentives, the government introducing internship incentives. Does this in any way change the hiring outlook in corporate India? Because if the question is of job creation, that's really what it boils down to. Will any company hire more because of these new government schemes? To talk about this, I'm joined by a very distinguished and eminent panel here at the India Today CII Budget Roundtable. I want to start by introducing the president of CII for this year, Sanjeev Puri. Thank you very much, Mr. Puri, for joining us. He's also the chairman and managing director of ITC Limited. Flanking him, we've got Rajiv Memani. Rajiv Memani heads up Ernst & Young in India. Mr. Memani, welcome. Great to have you with us. To my left is R. Mukundan, who heads Tata Chemicals as its CEO. Flanking him, we've got Vaishali Nigam Sinha, co-founder and chairperson for sustainability at Renew Power. Welcome. Joining us in a changed capacity this time. We had him in the interim budget. That time he was batting for the other side. Gaurav Vallabh, spokesperson of the BJP. Thank you and appreciate you joining us. So Deepak Shetty is with us. He is the CEO and managing director of JCB India. Welcome, sir. So let me start by asking Sanjeev Puri. Typically, companies have a fixed employment outlook for the year based on their projections of demand, based on their assessment of how much revenue they're likely to generate. Now the government says, not just to you, but to everyone in general, that we'd like you to hire more and therefore we're offering these additional incentives. Do you think the package of incentives that have been offered actually increase the amount of jobs that get created?
Okay, let me first start by saying that the whole premise is one, of course, of creating jobs. Second is about employability, because today you do find positions that are vacant and you're not able to get enough people. And the third is also about quality of jobs and incomes. So if you look at the budget holistically, I think it addresses all these three. I think just the resource part of the incentive is one piece of it. So there's a lot of impetus on skilling and education, lot of schemes there involving top 500 corporates, etc. When we come to this whole area about quality of incomes, that's about formalization, it's about agriculture productivity. That's where the quality of incomes will go up. So that's been squarely addressed. As far as the specific resources that are being allocated for as incentives to employment, I think employment linked scheme is something that I think the industry was also recommending, CII was recommending it. So what that it does provide impetus to both formalization and it provides impetus to additional opportunities getting created. Like it's about when you're kick-starting a system, just like the PLI, you're providing some incentives. These incentives are not there forever. So the initial factor cost of starting are actually getting moderated, and therefore that will provide some impetus. So that's the whole idea.
So that's the idea.
That's the whole idea, and that's what industry also had suggested employee-linked incentive.
Rajiv Memani, do you have an outlook for how many more additional jobs may potentially be created because of the employment-linked incentives that the government has offered? One is talk. I'm trying to understand what is the actual action and outcome.
See, I think Sanjeev captured it very well. The most important thing, Rahul, in this is the intent of the government. And I think the intent of the government, how do jobs get created? Jobs get created because government provides the nudges. I think these are the nudges that the government has provided. You have a strong economy and you have resilience in the economy. So it's not just today, but the next 5 years. So, if you look at the quality of macroeconomics and everything else, so it encourages people, makes them more confident to hire. So to answer your specific question, it may not impact the largest 10, 15, 20, 50 companies to make a difference. But for generally for mid-market companies, for MSMEs, and directionally, it's very clear that for anyone who is there, you always try and align yourself with where the policy is going, that the government wants you to hire more youngsters coming out of college. They want you to train more people.
But they've always wanted to.
No, but they're putting money where their mouth is. I think this kind of incentive has never been provided. A new person who gets a job gets paid 45,000 rupees by the government, 15,000 rupees per month. So imagine, Rahul, if you were first time joining a news channel and someone told you that, you are going to get 45,000 rupees, that's a big deal from an Indian perspective. Maybe.
No, sure, but ultimately that particular news channel or whichever organization has to decide that they want that person on board. That comes down to employment outlook and whether any company feels, and I want to bring in Chandrajit Banerjee because he's been pushing for employment-linked incentives. Now you have them. Now the question is, do you have an estimate for CII on how many additional jobs you think could potentially get created as a consequence of these new incentives?
See, this issue that industry faces, and we keep talking about the mismatch between what you require and the people with those expertise and skills. This particular scheme I see being able to be an enabler where you get great exposure. Say, for instance, for the large companies that was talked about, 500.
That's incentives for internships. I'm talking about employment-linked incentives, and I'm trying to understand on behalf of our viewers whether it creates more net jobs than what companies would have wanted to create in the absence of these incentives.
So just like the PLI had done, increased production and increased investment in those particular sectors, here we will see the companies who are able to invest or employ more are being incentivized to employ more. They would obviously be able to show that because today people need to employ. There is a gap of employment, and this really facilitates them to take in more. The numbers will come. You've heard about the numbers. We spoke about certain numbers in the budget estimates itself. But I do see a lot coming in because even the mid-sized companies would be able to do that.
No, but Mr. Puri, for example, you decide on behalf of Hindustan Unilever, I'm just making up the numbers, that you want to hire 1,000 people this year. Now you have these incentives. Rajiv Memani is telling us you will get 45,000 rupees, which is me entering the job market for the first time. Why do these incentives take up your number from 1,000 to 1,100?
See, I think we have to look at this whole subject holistically.
Yes.
It's about employment and employability.
Correct.
Employability itself will add to the headcount. Today, you've heard there have been media reports that there are certain requirements and the resources are not available. So, moment you increase employability, more jobs will be, headcount will be added. It's not that new jobs are added, but there are open
so
positions.
So not in companies like yours, they can train in companies like yours and work with some of the MSME companies.
That's the second part of it. I'm saying even large companies, there are large companies who have announced they do not have the pipeline of the trained resources to hire. I have so many 25,000 open. So what this is doing is that it is putting a lot of focus on employability by giving exposure to first timers by apprenticeship, etc. So once the pool of skilled employees is increased, more headcount will get added. And of course, for smaller companies, it is a much larger benefit. It provides the financial incentives and it provides the skilled resources. So we have to look at
provided they have the appetite to want to hire.
So appetite
is there in industry to hire, and when you are linking it to EPFO, you are actually helping formalization of jobs. And the numbers that have been talked about are something like a 210 lakh crore, 210 lakhs, 10 lakh people who can be impacted with that.
No, because if it gets added to the employee provident
that's
fund,
right, and so you are helping
then
formalization.
The employer has to also deal with all the current labor laws in the way
so
that
that's
they
why
exist.
we are also parallelly talking about labor, the factor market reforms, which include labor in a big way.
Which as of now is stock, and there hasn't been action on it.
It has been told that if the states do, states will be incentivized. That carrot and stick type of a thing has been given, that states which do second gen reforms will be incentivized more. So that part has been well mentioned in the budget.
But there's also the politics of these factors of production reforms. We saw what happened with the land acquisition bill. We also saw what happened when the farm bills were tried to be changed by the government. I want to go across to Gaurav.
Yes. This is real money going in, especially in MSMEs and others. This is real money going in the hand. So
do you see some people who were earlier in the informal sector now being formally brought on the rolls?
Correct, absolutely. And this is real money going through.
No, but take for example a mid-sized company. It's very easy for him to have contractual workers. The moment he brings them on board, he has to deal with labor laws as they exist at the moment, not what Chandrajit Banerjee is saying. At some point in time, that particular state government may reform those labor laws.
They're already dealing with 150. They'll probably deal with 200. So it's not that difficult that if you're dealing with 150, you can't deal with 200. It's also a question of economics where you're not sure how long you want to keep, tenure and everything. This is government providing financial incentive. People will make their own decisions. But I'm presuming that financial incentive will make a decision more towards leaning towards hiring more than...
No, but I haven't heard anyone say so far on their own behalf that this enhances my own employment outlook. Mr. Mukundan, you want to say it with everyone saying, okay, this will have a benefit on employability for MSMEs, we'll train them up, which is understandable. But Vaishali, do you feel this way, that this will increase the number of people you were planning to hire vis-a-vis what you were trying to hire previously?
I can probably give you an anecdotal example.
Yes.
When we were executing our expansion project, it came down to shortage of welders.
Okay.
Our project got delayed by almost 3 months because shortage of welders. Now, you can't train them overnight because these are very specialized skills. I think fundamentally what we are saying is these are friction in the job market which we need to ease. And
no, but where will these welders get trained in the new... In the big 500 companies, you'll have these internships for which you'll get incentives, but they're not probably for welding, right?
So we actually got some of these people out of colleges, out of the diploma schools and trained them in our plant.
That's fine. You're upskilling. But I'm saying, how do these current new set of incentives deal with the welder problem, for example?
So it's not an isolated issue, Rahul. I think the way what I would say is that, is there an impetus for growth in the budget? Sure. There is certainly an impetus for growth in the budget. Is there an impetus to improve competitiveness through focus on logistics and power sector reforms and moving ahead on that? There is certainly that will certainly grow the GDP. Manufacturing sector grew by 9%. But really when you go and meet the companies on the field, I can clearly tell you, while jobs is an issue in the community, the companies are saying, I don't have skilled manpower. The shortage is very, very apparent. That's what Chandrajit has been highlighting. And how do you bridge the gap? Bridging the gap comes from having a workforce which is rightly skilled. And that skilling is one issue we have not focused on. In India, the focus has mostly been getting graduation degrees, college degrees, but not the skilled
What you're saying is true in general, Vaishali Nika. I'm trying to understand the specific outcome of this budget announcement, and I haven't heard from anyone saying I will hire more as a result of these employment linked incentives.
Rahul, you're raising a good point, but just stepping back again, and again, not of course it's going to help, And it's not only this, but it's also the whole approach, the broad approach towards, skilling, capacity building, inclusivity. So if you look at, the hub and spoke for capacity building and engaging institutions, hiring, first-time job seekers, and the government saying that we are going to give you your first salary. I think this is messaging to say
no,
that...
it's messaging. I understand the messaging.
Right.
I'm trying to understand and distill outcomes, potential outcomes. Right?
Outcomes will be that our sector needs a lot of people to get to work. We need more women. So the whole issue about the hostels and the creches sounds like, nice to do. But honestly, if we want to get more women on our sites, these are absolutely critical. So it's going to help in us employing more women. It's going to help us to provide internships, because we do need a broad base of people who get skilled. Now, coming in working with us for a year is going to give them a brush to our sector, which will probably give them the base to go and look for other jobs.
But Gaurav, you've seen what the challenge is here. Everyone's saying the messaging is on point, and it is. The government is accepting that employability, employment, jobs is a central challenge, and they've put some muscle and money behind it. What is the end outcome? I'm saying, how far have we thought that through? So you've given some incentive, now you have something to say, but what happens at the end? That's what I'm trying to understand. Have you thought that through?
Rahul, if we had gone through the India Employment Report 2024, one of the basic challenge was that there was no linking of the employment and the employability issue, which was highlighted by the previous speakers. But the answer to your question lies with the 5 schemes. You have to look into these 5 schemes comprehensively. One scheme says that I will train in 500 top companies, 1 crore, 21 to 24 age group interns. Another
These are largely big companies, right? So high turnover companies.
So they are providing a pool. Now the second scheme says that if you are going to hire, the 1 month salary will be contributed. So 2.1 crore people are going to get the employment under this. The third scheme says that we will provide employers with 3,000 rupees per month for their contribution in their PF. So that formalization should happen. The fourth scheme says that we will also train 20 lakh young people for the MSME sector in ITIs with the help of the state government.
Which you've been trying to do in any case.
And the fifth and the last scheme says that we are more focused of creating jobs in the manufacturing sector. That is what government is intended to do. The employment-centric manufacturing is the key of one of the key of this budget. So we have to think of this. This is a holistic, from the supply to getting the final job. The formalization of the economy is happening, and this is how these all 5 schemes are interlinked to each other.
But I'll compare it, if I can, briefly to say Agniveer, right? So you have these interns, they come and work with the 500 top companies. During the course of the internship, they acquire new skills. Now, like when you retire from the army, you're available for employment in any of the central paramilitary forces, but ultimately you still need a job, right? So it comes down to that, Gaurav. That, okay, so you have this internship,
actually, Rahul,
and then what?
That is where I think the minister...
1 minute, Mukund. For example, Mukund wants to hire me, but I don't have that skill. But for example, I am getting internship in the Mukund's company, and I am getting for 1 year, and Mukund is not paying anything. The entire 1 year internship, the money is paid by the government. So Mukund will say, okay, let him do some work, see what he is doing, and after 1 year, Mukund is going to hire me because I had done free internship for Mukund's company. So I am now trained on the expense of government for Mukund's company. So he is going to hire me now.
Provided Mukund has the outlook and desire and appetite to want to hire more than otherwise. To some extent, for small and mid companies outside of the big 500, it does address
the challenge.
Yes.
Add a point. I think the minister also said they're going to bring a digital platform where people getting skilled and trained in these 500 companies, their details are going to be available for people who want to employ them. So this is actually, there's a 6th level which she's added to that, to say that not only, see, these 500 companies are the ones which will have training facilities. Firstly, I think it's not that MSME are going to have training facilities. So she is focused on these companies to say, listen, I think you provide the training to them and provide them high quality training so that these are extremely skilled. Then their data actually goes into the central network and it is available for MSME in Aurangabad who wants to hire, who are the people with this skill set available for me. And also, I think at some point they will also bring out a system by which the people who want to get employed can also look at the companies where these jobs are available and link them together. I think that is the missing piece. If you look at our own issue of employment exchanges, which were all started, they were physical. Now they're moving to a digital platform. And I think these are the steps in the right direction to build a...
Sure. So, no, the fact that the messaging is on point cannot be questioned. What we have to look at is ultimately what the likely outcome is.
So now let me just add to that. Okay, or maybe after him, let me...
No, so Deepak Shetty, just listen to my question. Now you've got these interns who come to the big 500 companies. These are interns you didn't necessarily want, but now the government is paying for them and you're kind of trying to play along. So you say, okay, aa jao. How do you ensure that they are gainfully employed for 1 year and that they actually acquire the skills? We've seen in the United States, for example, when such incentives were given, a lot of fudging happening. And if it happens in the United States, in India, jugaad goes into extreme levels, right? So how do you ensure they're actually getting skilled? They're not just taking the funds from the government and not getting the skills.
I'll answer both your questions.
Yes.
I'll give a specific example for the first question that you had. We had during COVID time set up a factory in Vadodara, completely export-oriented factory, focused on hardcore manufacturing. We recruited people from young team members, 18 years age, from ITIs of Gujarat. But the skills that they had were not good enough to allow them to weld components. We set up a facility with AR, VR technology. We used to put them through the training for 3-4 months, and after that they start production. The beauty about this scheme, as Mr. Vallabh rightly mentioned, is you can create a stream of people who you don't need to put on the job, but you can continuously train. So they acquire that skill, and when they are ready, you take them in. Today, your company, you have a large pool of people who are not contributing to the actual job, you are spending time in training. So this big need is addressed. The second point I wanted to make, for the industry to grow, if the MSME sector does not have the right skill sets and MSME sector does not grow, we will be the assembly capital of the world, will not be the manufacturing capital.
Okay, so you're providing a pool for the small and mid companies, that we totally understand. But let me ask you this question, Mr. Puri. Now you've got these interns, they come to you, everybody wants to come and intern at Hindustan Unilever. How do you ensure, how they intern at ITC, how do you ensure that they are gainfully engaged, that they actually acquire skills? Because you will have to leave a certain amount of bandwidth to try and deal with these interns who the government is paying for.
No, so internship and training are well-established processes in organizations, and there is capacity to train more people, and it can be done. And they will of course be properly mentored and gainfully employed, etc. All that will happen. But I just want to come back to this earlier point that you've been stressing on how do the jobs get created. Now let me just build on what I thought, just building on the anecdote that Mukundan said. See what happens if your project gets delayed. If a project is delayed, by the time the project gets into production, the lead time increases. So once the project gets into production, the economic opportunities start arising. If it's get delayed, it is later, right? How often have we heard from MSME sector that I now have orders, but I don't have the people to fulfill? We have heard it in our ecosystem. So there is this unmet need also that we must recognize, and I think that is where much of the benefits will come from.
Here's a real concern. One, the potential for misuse based on what happened in an advanced economy like the United States. So much reportage in America on how the incentives were misused. If it can get misused in the US, the chances of misuse in India are higher. And secondly, how do you ensure that during that internship, the youngster who comes to you gets the bandwidth from people at the lower levels of management to actually acquire the skills that Mr. Mukundan's company will later require potentially?
So I think there is one important thing that happens in that 1 year, and that is you train and you give him a certificate, which is the government norms, the NCVT certificate. That itself increases mobility, his job opportunities, and that 1 year gets utilized. You've seen all surveys of all large and mid-sized companies and small companies saying that we need people and we are not getting the right people.
Sure.
So I think there is appetite to employ more. And there is appetite to even take people. If you take two, one will go after 1 year, it doesn't matter. So this actually incentivizes you to rapidly involve more people in your workforce, for manufacturing companies especially. So that's a big way to go forward and have a trickle-down effect when they get trained in that 1 year and get that certificate. But that certificate, which they never get otherwise.
What misuse are you to? Sorry, Shari, please.
No, thanks. No, I just wanted to make one point. See, we all, as you were also mentioning, we all have internship programs.
Sure.
We have an internship program which is in rural India. We have a program which is a Global Green Scholars internship program. I think what an internship does is it just engages the youth to familiarize themselves with what they're interested in, and in a way, you know, they're getting this sort of competency to go and, you know, get qualified with the certification which CB was mentioning, and you know, become available for sectors like ours, for example, in the renewable space, with the extreme shortage of resources, for us to have this pool of capital which is ready, and obviously private sector will have to invest more in getting them more ready to fit in and to rely on them. But I think it's an introduction in areas and sectors where we need people to come to work.
The good thing is it's a big idea. At least there's an idea. Now obviously it depends on the implementation and that will determine the efficacy, but at least there's an idea that's been thrown out. You wanted to make a point before?
No, I was just wondering, when you're saying misuse, what misuse were you looking at?
No, so for example, that they were just getting the dole and not necessarily reporting into work and just benefiting from the dole. Right?
No, but these are top 500 companies.
Yeah,
right?
no, so I'm saying these are people, because now how much is the incentive on that company to actually make sure
but they're putting
that the person is
they're putting their name out, they're putting their on the digital portal and everything else. So yeah, there's 1%, 2% chance of everything, but I would say substantively 95% plus should be.
I think India's done better in many areas.
Sure. And technology leverage
we
will be
shouldn't
high.
benchmark with the US.
Having worked in UK, I have seen this very seamlessly being done there. It was very regular for the company JCB in UK to have a group of people, and it used to be handled. Obviously, you know, there may be some leakages somewhere, but overall it was very positive. And the most beautiful part about is that in India, even today, the college curriculum does not create people so that they can hit the job on the first day. I think this program will bridge that particular gap.
So the broad consensus on the first part of the broadcast is that directionally it's the right move, it's also the right signaling. Ultimately, then it is about reviewing how this gets implemented. I want to come now to the second central question, which is to do with investment outlook. And I want to start with Chandrajit Banerjee, because we've had this conversation multiple times. Now there is no new research to suggest that, yes, private investment, particularly in some sectors, like cement, steel, for example, is kickstarting. It's not happening for industry as a whole. Capacity utilization as an average is still in the mid-70s, hasn't headed up to 80s, has been mid-70s for a very long time. What's your current outlook on that, and to what extent does the budget address this central challenge of investment?
Yeah, so I mean, we have had government capex-led growth for time, and there has been, but as you said, the private sector has started investing in some of the sectors. If you really look at our outlook, we see more than 70% of the sectors above 75% of capacity utilization. That's what roughly the survey says.
No, but it stayed mid-70s for a very long time.
It stayed mid-70s for a very long time.
Why is it not heading up to the early 80s?
So no, it is heading up to more than 80s in many of the sectors. Many sectors have headed beyond 80% capacity utilization. Number one. Number two, you know, what we see also, a trend which is coming in is the entire thing of making it easier to do business. And I think that's very critical. You see in the budget also a lot of element of trust coming in terms of looking at the tax structures in the next 6 months. All of that actually enables for any entrepreneur, for any company to take that now plunge into greater investment. Today also, number three, you see a demand factor globally. We are doing well. Actually, we are doing well, even in especially services export, so to say. So we see even opportunities coming up for scaling.
But the economic survey also speaks of how services exports are likely to be impacted by artificial intelligence, and how the medium to long term trend is basically anti-service exports, and that whole sector is imperiled because of these global trends. Right?
Yes, the economic survey has been, I mean, it's also talked about very conservative growth rate for India, which is good, that type of cautious optimism. We are talking about an 8% growth, and we are talking about an 8% growth because we see private capex playing a very important role in the months to come.
So CII is projecting 8%.
Yes, please.
When the government is projecting 6.5%.
Yes, please. We
so
are.
you know what happened during the elections was that the BJP said "Ab ki baar 400 par." It didn't turn out like that. So they've been conservative, as they have been for a couple of years now. When it comes to growth numbers, industry and even the IMF is projecting a more bullish growth number. So they are being.
But Rahul, if you look at this
financially conservative.
If you look at last 3 years,
yes.
If you look at BE and RE, RE has always been higher than BE. I think if you look at the first two paras also of the finance minister, I think their basic, as I understand, the basic theme is that you are in a global uncertain era.
Sure.
You want India to be strong. There could be global headwinds because of geopolitical issues. So, you know, and also when you look at investments, you just don't look at GDP growth for this year. You look at what's the strength of the balance sheet. So a lot of focus has been be conservative, build a stronger balance sheet, provide clear direction, so that helps long-term investors to take better investment.
Now, how does this budget and everything that's happened in the build-up to it impact the investment outlook for India, in your view?
So I think, you know, the fact that the first theme is that a lot of people they'll become more populist and everything else. The focus remains the same. The focus is on macroeconomic stability. A lot of focus on trying to encourage manufacturing, MSMEs, jobs, which in a way will create demand of its own right, on energy transition, on focusing states and others to focus more on digitization. So if you look at all the themes around this, and even if you look at 7% growth or 6.5–7% growth, you compare with what's happening outside, and you look at a gliding path of fiscal deficit from 4.9% to 4.5% and hopefully below 4% in years to come, I think it does definitely give rise to, anyone who's looking at creating new capacity or whatever, that gives rise to that. And on your